What is up, guys? Londrick here, and now I'm back with Wrestling in 2002 Q&A session. So, this is the direction the Q&As are going to go in now. We did 1997 previously. That was pretty successful. Now we're doing 2002, and now looking at the question, I think this one's probably going to be better. So, after this, we're going to do other years here and there, which I'll make announcements at the time. So obviously by now you know how this works. You send the questions, I'll give the answer. No need for a big intro. Let's just get right into the questions. And the first set of questions come from We Are Pro Wrestling. Number 1. Thoughts on all the belt unifications in brackets, European hardcore titles of the Intercontinental title and the Intercontinental title of the World title? Well, I like 2 out of the 3, which I'll get into. Obviously, I feel like by 2002, it was probably a good idea to get rid of the European title. That had been pretty worthless for a while by now, so good idea to get rid of that, which they did in July with Jeff Hardy versus Rob Van Dam, the ladder match. So I was happy with that one, and by the same token, I was happy that the hardcore title was disbanded because I felt like that had run its course as well. So it was a good idea to get rid of some meaningless titles, so I like those ones. However, the one I fucking hated, the one I thought was a terrible decision then, one that I think is a terrible decision now, was the awful decision to disband the Intercontinental title in October 2002 at No Mercy, when it was Kane versus Triple H, and then obviously Kane lost, and then the Intercontinental title was disbanded for a while. Then we had no Intercontinental champion. That was just like, no, that was stupid. That was a terrible decision. Hated that decision. And obviously WWE realised it was a stupid decision because he brought the title back in 2003. So yeah, really hated that one, but I liked the other 2. Then what have we got? Horton Hollywood Hulk Hogan's WWE Championship in a Backlash 2002. I'm going to defend this one at the hilt. I absolutely fucking love that title reign. To this day, maintain it was the absolute right move. Something interesting's come out though since you asked this question. Just go with a little cheap plug, people. So one of the big podcasts I listen to is Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard. That's Bruce Pritchard's podcast, obviously. And him and Conrad were doing a show about Judgment Day 2002 last week. And Bruce claimed that it was actually Triple H who asked to lose the title to Hogan, saying that Hogan was so over, and he offered to lose the title to him, and apparently the decision was only made that day. So that's pretty interesting. But yeah, this is a big idea that I've always defended. Thought it was the absolute 100% right move. I mean, after WrestleMania, after Hogan had turned back face, holy fuck, went back to the red and yellow. The guy was so insanely hot at the time. Like at times he was getting like 10-minute standing ovations on television. I mean, it was like the whole Hulkamania craze had just come back. It was just like, what? This was just the damnedest thing ever. I mean, he'd been gone from the company for 9 years, came back as returning hero, was an overwhelming favourite against The Rock at WrestleMania 18. So you really had, and obviously Hogan was in his late 40s at the time, 48 going on 49, so you had to really capitalise on that while you could. Obviously with that, the whole thing, it wasn't going to last, was it really? I mean, Hogan was in his late 40s, it wasn't going to be a long-term investment, so you had to milk out of it what you could have done. And then there was that opportunity to face Triple H at Backlash in the main event for the WWE title. So yeah, for me, Hogan going over Triple H that night was 100% the right move. But I also thought it was the right move to only have it on him briefly as well, while we're on the subject. Obviously he lost the title to Undertaker at Judgment Day, which I also felt was the right move because Hogan was never going to be a long-term option. He was just, it was a great short-term fix, I thought anyway, but I enjoyed the hell out of it anyway. I think it was awesome seeing Hogan get the title back after 9 years, 18 years after winning it originally back in 1984. Just a cool time, really was. Then we got both debuted in 2002. At the time, who do you think was going to be more successful, John Cena or Randy Orton? Oh, definitely Randy Orton at the time. I mean, it wasn't really till 2003, 2004 where I thought Cena might be more successful. But if you got to remember at the time, Randy Orton was far more talented than John Cena, far more naturally gifted. I think Cena had to work a lot harder to get to the top than Orton did. I mean, he's Randy Orton coming in, third generation, 22-year-old prodigy, just good looking, natural talent, great athlete and all that. And then John Cena's 2002. Yeah, granted he had that really good debut against Kurt Angle, but he really just looked like another guy in tights, big muscled up guy in tights and boots. Didn't look anything special, especially when it was the ruthless aggression John Cena. You remember the one with the shitty haircut and the stupid tights and boots? And then he became the rapper in late 2002. But for me, that didn't really take off until he had that feud with Brock in spring of 2003. So at the time, everyone was like talking about this Randy Orton kid, how he was going to be the future of the WWE. And yeah, Randy Orton was a big success, but nothing like John Cena was. So yeah, definitely, if you're talking about 2002, I was definitely looking at Randy Orton and looking at him as being the more successful of the two. Then we got thoughts on Raw Roulette. I'm assuming you talked about that October 7th, 2002 episode. I really liked that Raw, actually. I mean, granted, I thought Raw was the absolute shit since most of 2002, and especially that time of Triple H's reign as world champion and all that. But I thought that was a great episode. Obviously, you had Chris Jericho and Booker T in a cage match, I think. I am trying to think what, but obviously this is obviously the card of TLC 4 with Kane versus RVD and Jeff Hardy, Bubba and Spike Dudley, Chris Jericho and Christian. That was an awesome match. And what about these wheel things? If you do these wheel gimmicks, you've got to at least let it land on the best thing you can. And they did here for TLC match, because you remember when WCW did Halloween Havoc in 1992, spin the wheel, make the deal, Sting versus Jake Snake Roberts. I mean, it's a work, so you can have the wheel land on whatever the fuck you want to, but WCW had it land on a coal miner's glove on a pole match. That was just like, what? I mean, you could have literally had any other kind of match and it would have been better, but in this case, you had a great TLC match. Probably not as good as the Hardy's, Dudley's Edge and Christian TLC matches, but definitely a great TLC match. A big win for Kane and all that, so I really like that episode. Last question. This is a good one. July 8, 2002, Bradshaw and Trish Stratus versus Christopher Nowinski and Jackie Gator. Describe that match in 5 words. What the fuck was that? There you go. The next set of questions, Hitman Fan 683, worst pay-per-view / best pay-per-view, in brackets because SummerSlam is too obvious, so worst pay-per-view, it's kind of funny because I don't think there was that many awful pay-per-views in 2002. I feel like the vast majority of them were at least good, but I'll say the worst way out, didn't really like that pay-per-view. Granted that the NWO's WWE debut, but there wasn't really that many good matches. I mean, I had Triple H and Kurt Angle, which was pretty good. Goldust vs RVD was surprisingly solid, but you had a pretty meh undercard. The Rock and The Undertaker was just decent. Jericho and Austin for the Undisputed title wasn't all that great, to be honest with you. So yeah, that one. Then best B pay-per-view. So like not a big 4 pay-per-view. That's got to be No Mercy, probably. Well, not probably. I think it is No Mercy. On the back of those 2 classic matches between Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit versus Edge and Rey Mysterio. Then, of course, Brock Lesnar versus The Undertaker beside Hell in a Cell. But you also had a pretty good opening between Chris Jericho and Christian versus Booker T and Goldust. Tajiri and Jamie Noble had a nice little quick match for the Cruiserweight title. Big Trish and Victoria had an okay little match. So yeah, probably No Mercy, I would say, for best B pay-per-view. Then what we got? What were your first thoughts on the brand split? So like the original brand split in 2000, I thought it was necessary at the time. I thought it was a good move by the company. I mean, obviously they acquired WCW and ECW the year before, meaning a lot of those guys came in. And then, so from the roster at the start of 2001 to the roster at the start of 2002, it's pretty much doubled, hadn't it? Really, I mean, look at the roster from WrestleMania 17, and then look at the roster at WrestleMania 18. I mean, for WrestleMania 18 alone, you had DDP, Booker T, Lance Storm, Rob Van Dam, Hulk Hogan, Hall and Nash, Ric Flair, a few other guys like random WCW mid-carders and whatnot. But yeah, so obviously with that big roster, there was like a ton of guys not getting TV time at all, because how do you fit all these guys onto one show? I mean, look at the main event scene. Just for one, you had at the time, Rock and Austin were still there, although they weren't going to be there much longer. Hogan, Hall and Nash, The Undertaker, Chris Jericho, Triple H, Kurt Angle, Kane, Rob Van Dam, Booker T, The Big Show. So a lot of guys. And then there was obviously guys in OVW who probably had to stay in development because he wasn't a big spot for them on the main roster. So with the brand split, that remedied that. And then obviously you saw the likes of Dave Bautista, Randy Orton, John Cena come through that year. Brock Lesnar, obviously, the main one. Yeah. But yeah, so I think it was good. And I think that the initial draft was actually pretty good. I mean, the time I think the rosters were well rounded. I think that was a good time to do a brand split because there was a big enough roster to justify, whereas now I don't think there really is. But that's another issue. Then what we got? Where would you rank this year in all of WWF/E history? Wasn't one of the best years. I mean, for me, I think like the best years were 97, 98, 99, 2000, that period. Then before that, I would probably say 85, 86, 87, 88, 89 were all better. So I would say hovering around the top 10, 11-ish, those sort of years. I think it's been the best year since then. I don't think there's been a better year since 2002. Maybe 2005, maybe 2008 was hovering around there, but I don't think it's amongst the best years, because I feel like, obviously the Attitude years, especially 97, 98, 2000, then like I say, going back a few years, going for like, I would say the period of 87, 88, 89, that was awesome as well. I wish I was around for that, but unfortunately I wasn't, so say around top 9, 10, something like that. Then what do we have here? Best champion, that means WWE World Heavyweight title, Intercontinental, etc. I would say not a great year for title reigns, but I would say probably Brock Lesnar as a WWE champion, if I had to pick one. But even that wasn't an outstanding reign, really. I mean, looking back, it was only actually a 3-month title reign. I mean, the WWE World title that year, there was a lot of change. I mean, you had Chris Jericho at the start of the year, and he was a fairly crap undisputed champion. Then Triple H had it for a month, Hogan had it for a month, Undertaker had it for 2 months, then The Rock had it for a month before losing to Brock Lesnar, who then lost to The Big Show, who had it for a month, who lost to Kurt Angle, who ended 2002 as the champion. So out of those, I'd probably say Brock Lesnar, but that's pretty much by default, really, if you think about it. There we go. Brendan Santoro. He asked, how would you have booked Hulk Hogan at SummerSlam 2002 and Survivor Series 2002? Now, SummerSlam's pretty hard, because what could you have done with him, really? I mean, that's the thing. Like, look at that SummerSlam 2002 card, especially from the SmackDown side of things. I mean, you had Brock Lesnar versus The Rock, Edge versus Eddie Guerrero, Kurt Angle versus Rey Mysterio, and something else. I can't remember what else it was. But out of them, who does Hogan really fit in with? I mean, I think the obvious choice would have been to do something with the Un-Americans, with Hulk Hogan being the American hero and all that. But they went on Raw, and so look at SummerSlam 2002. Would you actually change anything for Hogan? Not really. I mean, Survivor Series 2002, that's an interesting one, because originally we were going to get we were supposed to get Hulk Hogan versus Brock Lesnar. I don't know if you know that. Hogan was supposed to come back to face Lesnar, but Hogan and Vince had a disagreement. I mean, Hogan wanted to beat Lesnar and take the title back, but Vince wanted Brock to go over it, so the match didn't happen. So I guess you try and book Lesnar and Hogan and try and make that work, but again, looking at that card, what matches do you change for the sake of Hogan? I mean, that was an awesome pay-per-view, so what do you do? And then it's the similar question, how would you book Steve Austin at these two shows? Again, SummerSlam, I'm not sure. I think when he came, I suppose, I don't know, it's hard because I was going to say carry on the feud of Eddie Guerrero, but Eddie Guerrero went to Raw. So I guess you could have replaced Ric Flair and had Jericho versus Austin. Even though I don't think Jericho and Austin had that many good matches, and I don't think they really had great chemistry, but that's really the only match I could really justify changing for the sake of Austin. And then Survivor Series, assuming he stays on Raw, I would say you put him in the Elimination Chamber match. I guess you take Booker T or RVD out, or maybe even Kane to fit him in. I mean, it would suck for them, but obviously Austin's a bigger star than any of them, so I suppose that's the direction you're going, really. You put Austin in there as well. And what have we got now? Let's have a look here. Have a quick look-see. Thoughts on the plan for Mania being Rock Hogan the main event, only for the NWO to attack The Rock after the match in St. Paul? Heard from Nash. Well, there you go. You heard from Kevin Nash, so that's hardly a verifiable source. I mean, Kevin Nash has been known to tell some porkies in his time. Well, obviously, there should have been Hogan Rock in the main event. I mean, that goes without saying. No need to get into another big issue with that. I mean, come on, we all know that, right? Hogan Rock should have main evented. So, and then the part of the NWO, the problem was they couldn't really do that anymore because Hogan was getting so over as a babyface that he had to leave the NWO, turn face, didn't he, and become Hulkamania again. So, although I will say, part of the plan also that night was supposedly for Scott Hall to defeat Stone Cold, but Stone Cold said no and wouldn't go for it. But that's another issue. But for this one, I would say, obviously Hogan Rock should have main evented, but I feel like the match itself and the post-match and all that went the way it should have done, so they should have just done things exactly the same, with the exception of Hogan and Rock actually going on last instead of Triple H and Jericho. Then that's it for you. No. You've got one more question. In late 2002, what do you think the WrestleMania 19 main event was going to be? I think we all knew it was going to be Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle. I mean, as soon as Brock went to SmackDown and established himself there, you knew pretty much they were going to do Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle, probably at WrestleMania, and then obviously that took shape when the Big Show took the WWE title from Brock Lesnar and then lost to Kurt Angle. So then obviously Kurt Angle turned heel and joined up with Paul Heyman. So that pretty much set the storyline up, didn't it, really? So you knew from then on that's how it was going to go. It was going to be Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle, the main event of WrestleMania 19. I mean, that's what we all pretty much knew that on the IWC at the time. So, yeah. Then we got Honorable Sebiate. Which was a better world champion, Hulk Hogan or Brock Lesnar? As I said before, Brock Lesnar. I feel like, obviously, Hogan's title reign was only lasted a month, and I think you only had like 2 title defences at that time, maybe. I know he had a match with Ric Flair on Raw, which is kind of weird. And I think he had another undisputed title defence against Chris Jericho on SmackDown, if I'm remembering right. And but he only had it for a month, and then obviously Brock Lesnar had those 2 huge matches with The Undertaker. I think he defended successfully against Edge. Had that interesting feud with The Big Show, so I've got to be Brock Lesnar if I have to pick one of the two. Then what do we have now? Did you already know about Ring of Honor and that debut? Yes, I knew about it, but I'm going to tell you all a tale of what having the internet was like in 2002. I mean, some of you young pups probably don't believe me here, but back in 2002, we had forums and chat rooms and MSN. We didn't have YouTube or Dailymotion or any video sharing sites. We didn't have torrents either, even if we did, it was probably completely pointless downloading shit because most of us only had dial-up internet. Wait, what? What is dial-up internet, you ask? Well, before the days of everyone having, a few people had broadband, but before that, you used to have your little modem, you used to plug it in your phone line, and that's how you used to connect to the internet. It used to make this horrific noise before it was dialing up to go on, and when you used it, it wasn't the fast broadband that people have now. Most of us had 56k modems, which, yes, that's how we used to go on the internet, with slow 56k modems back then. I mean, it used to, I'm sure people like 25 or older will very fine remember this, but we had these little things where we used to download music, and it would take like a fucking hour to download one song and shit like that. Not now, when you can download something in about 20 seconds. So if you want to download an album, it would take you most of the day to do it. So if you would download shows, it would take us so fucking long. So yeah, obviously like now where you can go on Dailymotion and shit and have these websites which where you can stream. Not I'm endorsing this because it's wrong, children. It's wrong. Just covering myself here so the streaming police don't come after me. But if you want to watch a Ring of Honor show, you can do that. If you've missed Lucha Underground, you want to watch that, you can do that. If you want to find the last Evolve pay-per-view, you can go on the internet and find it. Want to watch last night's New Japan Wrestle Kingdom? Go ahead, it's out there on the internet. Where back in 2002, we didn't have that. What people had was tape trading. And when I say tape trading, I don't even mean DVD. I mean, yeah, DVDs were out in 2002, but they actually were still, a lot of people still had VHSs, so people would go on this forum and website and stuff and trade tapes of each other back and forth. So if you wanted to watch Ring of Honor, you would have to find someone who had them on VHS and get them sent to your house and stuff. So, and obviously back then I was 15 going on 16, so I didn't have any money, so I didn't actually see any Ring of Honor till about 2004 when we had this little thing on here in the United Kingdom called the Wrestling Channel, which was around for a while. That showed some Ring of Honor stuff. So the time I only heard about Ring of Honor, and it was making some noise. I remember people on the internet praising it for its presentation and its workers and stuff. I was hearing about guys like Low-Key, the American Dragon, the Amazing Red, Christopher Daniels. I'd already heard of Christopher Daniels and stuff like that, but yeah, I know I always say that, but yeah, so yeah, that's the only time I really knew about it. So I only knew about it, I never actually seen it. I mean, because obviously back then, stuff like that wasn't widely available. It was a different time. I mean, honestly, you youngs don't realise how lucky you have it now. With your fast broadband, with your YouTube, with your network, with all these websites you can go on that have the shows uploaded and stuff. I mean, if you're really a keen wrestling fan now, if you want to watch a wide variety of promotions, you can do that. And all free of charge as well, which is cool. Then what have we got? Would you call 2002 a year of wrestling renovation after WCW and ECW battle the year before? Yeah, because obviously for the first time there was really, at least at the start of the year, there was only the WWF as the only game in town, with WCW and ECW dying. So there was obviously, and then obviously the Attitude Era had ended as well. So it was time for the WWF to go in a different direction. They were getting away from the Attitude Era. A lot of the top guys, like The Rock, was going for Hollywood. Austin was dealing with injuries, walking out retirement. So they also had to kind of make new stars as well, which they tried to do with Brock Lesnar. But the thing with the Attitude Era, it only worked for a certain period of time. I mean, after you raise the bar so high, you have to kind of slow things down, get back to basics. And that's what they try to do at times with stuff like SmackDown and that. But then obviously with WCW and ECW gone, there was a massive hole in the market, which means new promotions were emerging. I mean, that must have sucked for the wrestlers though, I mean, because all this time before, if the WWF didn't want you or anything like that, there was always in WCW to get into, and if you weren't quite good enough for the big two, you needed experience, you could have went to ECW to learn and stuff like that, but there wasn't that anymore. But I remember World Wrestling All-Stars trying to fill the void, but that wasn't really successful, to be honest. Then of course 2002 Ring of Honor started up, and I do feel like Ring of Honor did help fill the void left by ECW. What I loved about that though is what they did. I mean, obviously ECW was about hardcore wrestling, all this crazy shit, all the weapons and all that. Ring of Honor went a completely different direction, and whereas ECW had broken all the traditional rules, Ring of Honor brought them back. Obviously Ring of Honor was built as like a real sport with the code of honor, respect, clean finishes, clean wrestling, all the rules being obeyed and all that, and it was actually pretty cool. I mean, and then obviously TNA started in June of 2002. I supposed to try and become a viable number 2 to the WWE. And at times they kind of did, but they never quite got on the same level as a WCW. But that's so yeah. Then was 2002 the best year of the American Badass Undertaker? Yeah, without a doubt. Not even close in my opinion. I'll say 100% was the best year of the American Badass Undertaker. Obviously 2000 was 2001 was a really crappy year with some of his worst views and matches. 2003 was good, not great, but I feel like it's because obviously after the heel turn as well, I'll say the big evil version of the American Badass was really good. Really like that Undertaker heel run, which I think there's a question in here about that as well, which I'll get into. But obviously had a good match at WrestleMania with Ric Flair. Had a pretty underrated undisputed title reign. I think that's also on here as well. And then obviously turned face, goes to SmackDown. Great feud of Brock Lesnar. So yeah, I would definitely say that was. And then what have we got? Ranking down WWE, Ring of Honor and TNA for 2003. So in reverse order, I'll say number 3, TNA. Number 2, Ring of Honor. And then number 1, the WWE. So yeah. And now what have we got? Another set of questions. We got Gold Standard 00924. Then we got what are your thoughts on the final King of the Ring as a pay-per-view? Do you think WWE will bring it back instead of sporadically? So the first part of the question, I thought King of the Ring 2002 was a good show. Don't think it was a fantastic pay-per-view or anything like that, but I would say it was a good show overall. I mean, you had a great opening of RVD and Chris Jericho. He had Brock Lesnar winning the King of the Ring. Jim Noble and Hurricane actually had a pretty good match. Kurt Angle and Hulk Hogan had an interesting match. I would say, the main event kind of sucked, but yeah, I thought it was a decent way for the show to go out. And would it bring it back all the time? I don't know. I mean, Lord knows now the amount of pay-per-views we're getting is fucking ridiculous. I mean, we're getting like 22 pay-per-views or something stupid like that this year, so you'd think obviously now with the network and all these pay-per-views again, they could bring back King of the Ring as a pay-per-view if they wanted to, but obviously now that would mean they would have to have it double branded. I think you can't really, it would be unfair to give Raw, SmackDown, the King of the Ring like as a single brand, but I don't really want it to because I feel like the last few have just been so bad. I mean, look what it did for Sheamus. Really hurt him, especially King Barrett. That pretty much ruined his career, in my opinion. I think he got buried, and I think it just hurt the King of the Ring name as a result. So I'd rather they didn't bring it back, to be honest with you. Then we got what do you think about the idea of splitting the undisputed title into 2 world titles for each brand? In retrospect, while it had its moments, I thought it became a dumb idea in the long run. I have to admit, if it was up to me, I'd rather just kept it as the undisputed title. I mean, and that's pretty much what I think WWE should have done in this brand split. Not bringing a universal title and had one WWE champion, which goes on both brands like they did in the original brand split. Back also, well, that would have been nice, but I feel like when he did that in the early brand split, it worked. I mean, but I will say it did kind of work having two world titles. I mean, at the time you had two big rosters, so you could justify it, and I do feel it worked for a while, from like until maybe 2007-ish, where 2008, where the world heavyweight title definitely decreased in value. But I think at least initially, obviously with the world heavyweight title being on Raw and Triple H having it, so at least then the world heavyweight title was getting treated with respect and treated as a credible world title. So I feel like for a while it worked, but yeah, in my opinion, I would have rather just kept it how it was, but whatever. Then 2002 was notable for the split of many tag teams like the Hardys, Dudleys, and the APA out of the three teams which were really kept during the inaugural brand split. Well, I just want to point out that the Hardys weren't actually split up in the brand split. They didn't split up till later on, so they were actually on the original brand split for a while. But out of those three teams, I would say I'd probably keep the Dudleys together. I mean, at the time I feel like it was a bad move to end the Dudleys team. I don't think they were nowhere near as done as a tag team yet. I feel like neither were ready for a singles run either. I mean, Bubba Ray was moderately successful, I suppose, on Raw. I mean, he had hardcore title runs. Was a decent little mid-carder. Even had a mini feud with Triple H, but Devon went to SmackDown, did the Reverend Devon thing, which was, it was alright, I guess. Wasn't terrible, but wasn't great good by any means. And then obviously WWE brought them back together in late 2002, which I feel was the best move. So I'll say out of those three, the Dudleys, because I feel like the APA, that wasn't really a big deal, them splitting up. I feel like they were going to give Bradshaw singles, but I feel like the Hardys had probably reached the end of their run as well. I feel like both benefited from splitting from each other. Yeah. But I'll go to then, as I said, the Dudleys, and then here's a good one. What was your reaction when Eric Bischoff debuted in WWE in 2002? Then it also a part question, how the NWA not disbanded, how his involvement impact the stable? So one, yeah, that was fucking what? That was probably one of the most surprising moments in WWE history. This was Eric Bischoff was showing up on Monday Night Raw. I mean, let's just remember, not too long before this, Eric Bischoff was the guy who was running WCW while WCW was killing the WWF. I mean, Bischoff came in for an eyelash, putting Vince out of business. I mean, Bischoff did some rotten stuff like getting all the talent here, giving away Raw results on Nitro, getting Medusa to throw the WWF Women's title in the trash can. I mean, this was fucking personal shit. I mean, this was, wow. And then, obviously, things happened. Bischoff lost his power, WCW died, and then... So you're thinking, no way, I mean... I know Vince will bring back a lot of guys, but no way is he ever going to bring in Eric Bischoff, right? I mean... but he did, and holy, that was just like... Nobody saw that coming. And if anyone comes in here and tries to claim that you saw that coming, I'm going to call them a liar. I mean, obviously in an age where the last 20 years or so, where obviously backstage stuff's being known, I mean, most of the time stuff like that leaks out on the internet that so-and-so's coming in. I mean, we knew that the Hogan Hall and Nash were all negotiating to come in not long before that. We knew about Goldberg's negotiations with WWE in 2002. A few more recent examples, I mean, it was all over Twitter and Wrestling Observer and stuff that Brock Lesnar was coming back in 2002. Trying to think, it was been back since then. Can't remember, but trying to think if it was come back since then. Obviously, yeah, Goldberg's negotiations last year, that was well known. But yeah, this one was like, no internet site picked up on this. No Wrestling Observer picked up on this. The Figure 4 Weekly didn't pick up on it. None of the wrestling websites at the time had this down. Because apparently only really Vince, Stephanie, Kevin Dunn, Bruce Pritchard said he knew. And so I'd imagine Vince probably told some of his closest confidants. But yeah, that was, even the boys were kept in the dark about this, the wrestlers themselves. So, wow. with Visit Man announced Eric Bischoff as the general manager of Monday Night Raw. That was truly shocking moment. Really was. And then how this was impact the NWO. I don't know, I just felt like NWO was done by that point. Probably wouldn't have made much difference, I feel like. It was pretty much dead after Hogan had to turn face, Nash got injured, Scott Hall got fired. I mean, they even tried to bring Shawn Michaels back to revive it, but even that was only so at best, so don't think that would have had any real impact, to be honest with you. And that's another one. So next question from Weapon Alex. Who do you think should have beat Brock Lesnar for the title if the Big Show didn't? That's the thing, I feel like the Big Show is probably the right guy to do it. I mean, what you got to remember is the person doing this was only a placeholder. I mean, Big Show only beat Brock Lesnar so he could transition the belt onto Kurt Angle, so that could set up WrestleMania 19, Angle versus Brock. So whoever it was only going to have a short title reign, so had to be someone who it didn't really matter, wasn't really going to get affected by a short-term title. So if say they did it with Edge, an up-and-comer like Edge, and you only had a 3-week title reign or whatever it was, that would have hurt him, I think, at the time. And obviously there was those guys like Chris Benoit and all that, which maybe Benoit could have done it, but also what you got to remember, Big Show 7 foot 500 pound, it was at least believable for a guy like the Big Show to beat a 25-year-old 300 pound monster like Brock Lesnar. So I feel like maybe they could have done it if the Undertaker wasn't injured, maybe, but I would actually go on record and say probably Big Show was the right guy to do it with overall. Then what we got? What would you give the tag team of Rey Mysterio and Edge? Well, I don't really say they need to give them a name. I think Rey Mysterio and Edge is fine, to be honest with you. Can't really think of anything that would work. Not sure, to be honest with you. Then we got what was the best pay-per-view 2002 non-Big Four? So answer this one early, but got to be No Mercy. Like I said, 2 classics with Angle and Benoit versus Edge and Mysterio, and then of course Brock Lesnar versus Undertaker aside Hell in a Cell. Those 2 matches alone are enough to earn it that title. Honourable mention, Vengeance was pretty good, I thought. Unforgiven was quite a good pay-per-view. Even though Armageddon was enjoyable, to be fair. But yeah, I'll say out of the rest, got to be No Mercy, really. Then we got Diesel 101 Raw. How much did it suck that Chris Benoit missed WrestleMania's home country? Yeah, it sucked, but not a massive deal for me. I mean, think about what would Chris Benoit have actually done at WrestleMania 18 that was meaningful. I mean, you look at that card, I mean, not going to break in one of the top matches, is he? I mean, could have maybe revisited Angle versus Benoit, I suppose. That would have been probably better than Angle versus Kane. Maybe Chris Benoit, Booker T, as obviously Booker T was facing Edge, and obviously Chris Benoit just having normal short hair. You wouldn't have had that stupid Japanese shampoo angle. Chris Benoit versus Edge. So I think he would have had a nice mid-card spot, but don't think Chris Benoit would have broken any of the top matches of that WrestleMania. Then we got how much more would WrestleMania 18 be if Austin Hogan, Triple H, Angle, Jericho, Rock and Edge and Christian happened? Well, a hell of a lot better than what WrestleMania 18 actually was. I mean, now granted, I don't think Triple H and Kurt Angle would have been that of a greater match, but it would have been alright. I mean, obviously Brock Jericho would have been a pretty great match, but they'd already done that feud in 2001, a match Rumble 2002, so that wasn't really fresh. Edge and Christian would have been cool. Obviously, it would have been better than Edge and Booker T fighting over shampoo and Christian having temper tantrums being mentored by Diamond Dallas Page. Yes, alright, I didn't like that Edge and Booker T storyline. And I'll probably keep going on about it, but God, that was awful. So yeah, I think it would have made WrestleMania 18 better, but I don't think any of those matches were absolutely essential or anything. Then what have we got? How funny is it that the first half and the second half of the roster look so different? Yeah, I mean, you look at the first half of the year, so from January to June, you had on top Chris Jericho, Triple H, Stone Cold, The Rock, Undertaker, Kurt Angle, NWO, guys like that. And then towards the end of the year, the main event scene looked like Triple H. Shawn Michaels was back. Scott Steiner had just come in. You had Van Dam, Booker T, Jericho, Kane. Then obviously Brock Lesnar had emerged through with Kurt Angle. The Big Show's in a top position. Angle and like Benoit, Guerrero, Edge were all in solid upper mid-card position on SmackDown. So yeah, I think a lot changed about WWE in 2002. So yeah, I think the bigger one is started from, I would say the biggest change was probably WrestleMania 17 to WrestleMania 18, because so many guys came in during that time period. But yeah, it was a very different roster at the time. And what have we got? How many wrestlers could you say were in the peaks that year? I suppose Rock. You would say The Rock. I think Kurt Angle had his best ever year in 2002, but obviously we'd have more good years after that. Not really sure. I mean, Van Dam, I suppose you could say. People like Kane, Booker T. But yeah, I'll say those guys more than anything. Then we got, if someone were to tell you in early 2001 that both Hogan and HBK would have an awesome comeback, what would your reaction be? Well, I'll say for Shawn Michaels, I would have seen it as plausible. I mean, obviously Shawn Michaels was still in his 30s and hadn't wrestled in like 1998, but I mean, there was always rumbling since about 2001 that Shawn was going to make a big comeback. Obviously, that never materialised until 2002. So, if you said in 2001 Shawn Michaels would have an awesome comeback, I'd probably believe that. I would say, alright, that's fair enough. Then, as for Hogan, I would have said maybe. I mean, obviously Hogan was in his late 40s at the time. The last couple of years in WCW weren't great, so obviously the Attitude Era was still around at that time, so I think the Hogan one would have been interesting. I would say I'm not sure about that one, but it was fucking awesome. That 2002 seemed like the year of great comebacks. I mean, you had an amazing comeback from Hogan and amazing comeback by Shawn Michaels. But on a more of a mid-card level, but Eddie Guerrero made a great comeback after getting clean for being a drug addict for all those years. So that was pretty cool. Then we got next set of questions, Mr. Lucid LJ. Would you have chosen to do the brand split in 2002? Yeah, I feel like it was the right move for the company at the time, because like I said earlier in the video, obviously with WCW dying, ECW dying, WF acquired a lot of those talents, so within the space of the year, the roster had basically doubled. When you look at the roster in 2002, like the time they did the brand split, it was huge. So you could have. So it was the right time. Like, what they originally wanted to do, I mean, going back to 2001, one of the original ideas for the invasion was for, after they realised that they couldn't get the new WCW on television, they were going to give either Raw or SmackDown to WCW. So one of the shows was going to be WWF, and the other show was going to be WCW. So that was the original idea, but of course, obviously, with what happened with the invasion, they scrapped that idea. But then they decided to do it after the invasion ended, because there was all that, it was really pretty much after the invasion until they actually did it. I mean, I remember hearing that they were going to do it in January, and then obviously they held it off till after WrestleMania. So yep, if I was in charge, I would have done the exact same thing. I feel like it was the right time to do a brand split. Do I think it's right to do one in 2016? Probably not, but that is another issue. In your eyes, who was the best wrestler of 2002? Oh, definitely Kurt Angle. I mean, what a year he had. I mean, great promos, great character, excellent matches. I mean, look at that. I did a video a while ago, top 10 Kurt Angle matches of 2002, and every single one of those matches was at least a 4-star match. I mean, there was even a couple of 4-star matches that didn't even make the list, which tells you what kind of year he had. I mean, he had an awesome feud with Edge, had an interesting feud with Hogan. Obviously, triple threat at WrestleMania, at Avengers with Rock and The Undertaker. Tremendous matches, SummerSlam opening for Rey Mysterio. Again, awesome matches with Chris Benoit. Notably, Unforgiven 2002 were an underrated gem. Then being part of the SmackDown 6 tag team matches with Benoit against Edge and Mysterio is definitely Kurt Angle in my opinion. Now, this is an interesting question and I'm not sure if I'm getting this right, so I'll answer this the best I can, and hopefully I've not interpreted it wrong. What 6 talents like the SmackDown 6 could TNA have used to build their company? Start off in the right foot. So by this, I'm assuming you mean 6 guys you actually had, not which 6 guys would you pluck from the WWE or anything like that. So if I'm wrong about that, you can comment in the section below, but that's what I think you mean. I think you mean 6 talents that they actually had that they could have used like the SmackDown 6. So obviously 3, and they did this in the X Division, AJ Styles, low-key Jerry Lynn. Then I would say, I don't think TNA 2002 had a great roster, to be honest with you. I mean, they had some good talent, but the best talent was probably in WWE, so I think Jeff Jarrett, oh god, I feel dirty saying that. But yeah, Jeff Jarrett was a decent worker and probably could have worked well in that role. Oh, I felt so bad saying that. But who else was he really? I mean, Ron Killens, I suppose, was decent talent at the time that he had. I'm trying to think of who else he had to when he debuted the company at that time. Because like I say, the best talent was in the WWE, really, wasn't it? I can't really think. So I can't really think of a 6th guy I've got. So I've got Low-Key, I've got Styles, I've got Lynn, I've got Jarrett, I've got Killens. Because Shamrock, I would have said Ken Shamrock, but he was only in TNA for a couple of months, so I suppose I'll cheat and put him in there and have him in there TNA for the rest of 2002, but that's not an easy question because the rosters wasn't really that good, to be honest. Then we got most underrated WWE talent. I'll go with Jamie Noble for that one. I feel like he was really good underrated talent. Good cruiserweight champion, good mid card, had a decent character. I mean, it was a whole redneck hillbilly shit, but I enjoyed it anyway. But like him and Nidia had a good partnership. Always had solid matches. I think he was like a good technical cruiserweight, if that makes sense. So he wasn't like a big high flying type guy or anything like that, but he had good wrestler matches a lot of the times. So I'll probably say Jamie Noble, I thought was extremely underrated. Then I go, should WWE have carried on with a better invasion story that carried over into 2002 and try to bring it back in this year? So I get the impression this question was inspired by a big rumour that took place that year. So I don't know how many people remember, but Vince Russo briefly returned to WWE for a couple of days in 2002. Met with the writing team, made a whole load of pictures which didn't go down too well, and obviously then he clashed with Stephanie and ended up getting his contract there. They reneged on the deal and didn't bring Vince Russo back ultimately. But one of the big pictures that Russo apparently did, I mean, this hasn't been confirmed, but this is what I heard over there, that one of Russo's big pictures was to basically, obviously now they had different talent. They had like the NWO and Hogan and Flair and that in the company. And I think Scott Steiner was pitched to come in. So they were good. Obviously, and Bischoff was coming in as well, or he was already there. I can't remember which one it was. So the big pitch now was to basically redo the entire invasion. Obviously, bring back WCW as a brand with some of the bigger names and try to do it again. So that's where I get the impression this question was inspired from. But for me, I would say no. I'll say the original invasion was just such a flop. Let's just forget about it. Let's just flog it. Let's stop flogging this dead horse any longer. I mean, they ended it in 2001. So after that, I was just like, all right, that sucked. Let's just forget about it and move on. Let's not revisit this again. So I would say no. I would say you should have just left the invasion in the past and not went there again. I mean, yeah, granted they did have some bigger name talent now. They had Hogan, Hall and Nash. They had Ric Flair. They were bringing in Scott Steiner. They could have had Eric Bischoff to be the mouthpiece of the group, but for me, no, I would have just left it in the past and left it at that, basically. Next set of questions come from Greedy Selfish 97. He's got, who were the top 3 best superstars on the Raw brand? I would say 1, Rob Van Dam, 2, Chris Jericho, and guess Triple H by default. Then same question, which is who were the top 3 superstars in the SmackDown brand? Now this is a good one, so I would say number 3, Edge. Obviously he was there all the time from the brand. Had a great feud with Kurt Angle, cool title reign of Hulk Hogan, feud with Eddie Guerrero, team with Rey Mysterio. Then number 2, Brock Lesnar, who came through in July, got the undisputed title, great feud of the Undertaker, all that. And then number 1, obviously, and I would say best superstar in the WWE period and wrestling period that year, is Kurt Angle. I mean, no need for me to tell you what a great 2002 he had. You probably know all these awesome matches, great promos, countless great matches. Feud with Chris Benoit, Edge, Rey Mysterio, The Undertaker, The Rock. Yeah, just awesome stuff. What is the most underrated pay-per-view of 2002? Unforgiven was a pretty good one, I thought. I mean, I feel like it gets overshadowed by the next 2 pay-per-views, and that's No Mercy Survivor Series in the previous pay-per-view, which was SummerSlam. But this was a pretty damn good show. You had a nice opener of the Un-Americans versus Kane, Booker T, Goldust and Bubba Ray Dudley. Edge and Eddie Guerrero had a very good match. Triple H and RVD had a decent world title match. Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit had probably their most underrated match ever. That was an awesome match, that one. And then main event, Brock Lesnar versus The Undertaker. That was a damn good WWE title match, I thought. Does get overshadowed by the classic Hell in a Cell at No Mercy, but still, that was a great match. Maybe the finish wasn't so great, but the match was pretty damn good. And then the last one, well, which WCW star would you like to see it go in the WWE in 2002? Ooh, that's a tough one. I mean, so obviously NWO came in, Scott Steiner came in, so that really leaves a choice out of 2, isn't it? Really, between Goldberg and Sting. And as you put me on the spot and made me pick one, gotta be Goldberg, hasn't it? Really. So suppose Goldberg comes in at the same time the NWO does, like early 2002, maybe just after the Royal Rumble. What if he came in and then WrestleMania 18 had The Rock versus Hogan and Steve Austin versus Goldberg? Wow. Just imagine how huge that would be. I mean, would that WrestleMania have a legitimate claim to be the biggest WrestleMania of all time? Rock and Hogan, Goldberg, Austin. And then even after that, Austin and Goldberg could have had maybe more matches. Could have properly built up Goldberg versus The Rock sometime. Goldberg versus The Undertaker maybe. Goldberg versus Triple H. I mean, especially if Goldberg came to WWE and was booked right. I mean, you could just go through 2002 doing Goldberg dream matches, making a fucking shit ton of money in the process. So if I had to pick Goldberg now, we got Mr. Beatle 890, most underrated character of 2002. That's a good one. And then I'll probably say Christopher Nowinski, if you guys remember him. Former Tough Enough contestant, Harvard graduate, came in the WWE. He lost Tough Enough to Maven, but he ended up later getting a job in WWE. He came in with pretty much the Harvard graduate prick gimmick, like arrogant Harvard graduate. I thought he was a really good character. I mean, obviously he was young and green, but I feel like he was pretty damn good on the mic, had a pretty good character, and caught unfortunate circumstances, ended up getting a series of concussions, retired in 2003 at the age of like 24, something like that. But he was very young, very young when he retired. But yeah, I'll say he's a pretty good choice to go with. And then we got a similar question, but most underrated in-ring worker of 2002. I think I said this before, but I'll go with Jamie Noble for that one. Really liked his work. I think he was just a very good, solid wrestler. I mean, he was a cruiserweight, but he was a different type of cruiserweight. He was more of a technical cruiserweight. I mean, he wasn't like, he didn't do like loads of fancy flips or shit like that, but he was just a good worker. I mean, he had a really good underrated cruiserweight title reign, I thought, in 2002. Obviously, we saw how good he really could be when he went to Ring of Honor in 2005. If people remember that. Who knows? 2005 Q&A could happen eventually, which we'll get into later. But yeah, Jamie Noble at the time. What do you think of Ric Flair signing of Triple H? Thought it was a good move. I really do. I mean, Ric Flair. The thing with Ric Flair, I feel like he's always much better as a heel. I mean, not that Ric Flair hasn't been a successful babyface in the past. He has. I mean, he's had good face runs in the past, such as when he was feuding with Harley Race for the NWA title. When he was facing 89, feuding with Terry Funk. 93, feuding with Vader. And of course, at a certain point, these last few years in the WWE, he was just so respected by the fans, they couldn't really keep him heel anymore. But he was a face again in 2002, and it was good. Yeah, granted, it was good and entertaining and all that, but always prefer Ric Flair as a heel. And obviously, Ric Flair was, well, in his 50s by that point, so he wasn't the Ric Flair of the 80s or anything like that anymore, or even Ric Flair of the early mid 90s no more. So you're thinking, well, having him side of Triple H gave him an excuse to not be in the ring all the time. I mean, he was more of a manager to Triple H, who sometimes wrestled. I mean, he started wrestling a bit more frequently in like 2003, 2004, and obviously you have the history of pretty much being Triple H's idol, so that was an interesting little twist. And of course, them two signing together in 2002 led to the formation of Evolution in 2003. So if Triple H and Flair don't align themselves in late 2002, does the idea for Evolution come up? Possibly not. And if that doesn't happen, do Randy Orton and Batista become as big as he were? Again, possibly not. So I enjoyed it. Thoughts on Chris Jericho and Christian's run as Raw Tag Team Champions? Wasn't very long, if I remember right. I mean, I think they won it in October. Or, I can't remember. No, I'm trying to think. No, you're right. No, sorry, I'm wrong. Yeah, they did win it in October because they beat Kane and did they beat Kane and Hurricane? I think. Because I'm trying to remember, because God, it was 15 years ago now. Yeah, because they were tag team champions at No Mercy, weren't they? Held it from all the way to Armageddon, where they lost to Booker T and Goldust in the Fatal 4-Way. So yeah, I thought it was a good run. I don't think it was a fantastic title run or anything like that, but it was definitely enjoyable. I think I remember them having entertaining feud with Booker T and Goldust. I think they even wrestled the Dudleys a couple of times. It wasn't very long though, but it was enjoyable while it lasted. I liked it anyway. But yeah, and then of course, obviously that led to late 2003, early 2004. These guys feuded with each other, which helped Christian out a lot at that time, I thought. So I liked it, but I didn't think it was fantastic. And now, thoughts on Scott Steiner's return to WWE Survivor Series that year. So for this one, I'm only going to really talk about the actual debut Survivor Series, not how awful the run became after that, the awful matches in Triple H. So this question, I'm going to focus solely on that debut Survivor Series. I thought the actual debut was pretty great, to be honest with you. I mean, if you remember, he interrupted a segment between Christian and Matt Hardy and then just beat the crap out of them. I mean, when you heard Steiner's siren music come on Survivor Series, MSG crowd popped huge for him. Because obviously we remember there was weeks of speculation about Steiner coming in. I think we were all like wanting Steiner to sign since the end of WCW, really. I mean, it broke out the internet that he had signed a deal and was coming in soon. So they did it at a perfect time at Survivor Series in Madison Square Garden. And believe me, moments in Madison Square Garden mean a lot more. So he did that, then he gave me the fucking awesome way he just goes, "Give me the fucking mic!" Now this was a live pay-per-view, so they couldn't edit that out, and so Scott Steiner said a big F-bomb live on pay-per-view. Now, let me ask you, if you're in charge, are you going to tell Scott Steiner, please don't do that ever again? Because I don't really want to be given the task of telling Scott Steiner off. I mean, look at the fucker. Then he just cuts his promo and all that, and it's all good. Now, what happened afterwards, it all went downhill after that, but that's for 2003. Like I said, maybe we'll cover that one day. Then, question from Harry Rickett, it's just one question. Due to the success of SmackDown, should they bring in a US title a year earlier and use it to elevate people like Edge, Eddie, Benoit? Yeah, I think so. I think that's definitely correct, I would say. Obviously, they brought back the US title in 2003. So, yeah, I would have done exactly that. I think you're absolutely right when you say that. They could have brought it in around maybe shortly after SummerSlam, done a tournament, get us to Unforgiven. Maybe it could have been Eddie Guerrero and Edge in that. Maybe Edge could have won the US title then. And obviously there's not just those three guys. There was good mid-carders on SmackDown at the time, such as Matt Hardy. Trying to think. Rikishi was on SmackDown, that could have helped him. Maybe guys like a young John Cena, a young Dave Bautista, a young Randy Orton. Solid guys like Hardcore Holly and people like that. So, yeah, and obviously while we're on the subject, not only should have still kept the Intercontinental title on Raw as well. I know I bitched about that earlier, but this is kind of relevant. So I'm going to have one more little bitch about that. So, yeah, and then we've got Ty Overstreet. He's a good one. Overall thoughts on the Duty product in 2002. It's funny because I remember at the time, you've got to remember, I was watching the Attitude Era for the previous 4 years or so at that point. Obviously 97, 98, 99, 2000. Then went downhill in 2001. And I was in my teenage years. I was one of those people who used to bitch online about how WWE declined in quality and all that. And overall I think it did, but looking at it 15 years later, as a grown man now, I'd probably give me right arm for WWE to be like it was in 2002. Given how WWE is now, I would love for the product to be like it was in 2002. So, say first half of the year was pretty stale, to be honest with you. I mean, you look at it at Raw from like January, February 2002, before the initial brand split, it pretty much looked, the whole the presentation of the show looked exactly the same as it did in 1999. Things hadn't really updated. I mean, there's a different roster now, sure, and obviously I feel like they were going for quick fixes, such as bringing the NWO back and stuff like that. I mean, Austin and Rock were still around, but they weren't as hot as they had been. I mean, don't get me wrong, they were still very over, but they were still very, very popular, but definitely not as hot as he had been 2 or 3 years earlier. Chris Jericho had a dreadful title reign. Maybe we'll get into that in a second. It was just, and then the draft happened, and then obviously they updated the look of the show and all that, I feel like. And then from the brand split onwards, I think you can sum it up by saying SmackDown was great, Raw was shit, really. I mean, not a fan of Raw in 2002 at all. I feel like the first half of the brand split, with obviously NWO declining, Austin leaving and stuff like that, Flair going back as a wrestler, not much was going on really. Then after that, Triple H's Reign of Terror happened. Then we got crappy storylines such as Katie Vick, which someone actually sent me a question about that, so just wait on that one, guys. It's coming. My thoughts on the Katie Vick angle is coming, believe me. Then the HLA stuff and all that, and then SmackDown I thought was pretty awesome, especially I would say after July. I mean, the initial brand split SmackDown was good. I don't think it was fantastic, but I had enough good stuff on there, like Hulk Hogan coming back, being Hulkamania, Edge and Kurt Angle feud, which I thought was awesome. Some good little mid-carders, then obviously after that, after they did the roster shake-up, because basically remember, they did there was a 2-month period from July to September where the contracts were open and guys could jump to the shows and jig the roster around, and then all of a sudden SmackDown has Brock Lesnar now, and then he became the champion and had that feud with The Undertaker. Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero came over to feud with the likes of Edge, and then Rey Mysterio came over. So then now you get the epic SmackDown 6. So if you haven't seen them, they're on the network. I would suggest, if you got the time to do this, maybe people have like work and school and commitments and stuff, but if you watch like SmackDown from, I would say, the July the 4th 2002 episode to the end of the year, you'll see how awesome SmackDown was. I mean, it was booked by Paul Heyman. I mean you hear a lot of older fans, like, yes, people like me, but people around my age group and older saying the WWE should be like it was in the Attitude Era, where I say no. I would say my vision of what WWE should be like now is more like SmackDown was in 2002. A good wrestling show, but it didn't neglect the storylines either. I mean, I feel like it had the perfect balance of in-ring work and storylines. I mean, you still had great storylines such as Hulk Hogan's title reign, Undertaker versus Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle versus Edge, that sort of thing. So that's it there. So there we go. And then what have we got next? Top 5 wrestlers that year. So let me have a quick scan in my brain about this. So I will go number 5, Chris Jericho. Obviously his undisputed title reign was pretty naff, to be honest with you, but he was still cutting good promos and having good matches and all that. He had a really underrated Hell in a Cell match with Triple H at Judgment Day. Him and RVD had an excellent opener at the King of the Ring. He did his best to carry Ric Flair through a feud in 2002. Yeah, and just was a good part of Raw. And then I'll say number 4. Actually, let's scratch that for a moment. Yeah, let's scratch that. Take Chris Jericho off the list for a second. Then we put RVD at number 5. I'll put RVD slightly above Chris Jericho. I feel like RVD was so over that year. Became the Intercontinental Champion. Had a very good feud with Eddie Guerrero, including an awesome ladder match. Unified the European and Intercontinental titles. Really underrated match with Chris Benoit. SummerSlam. It was just really over and good. So then number 4, we'll go number 4, Edge. Thought he had an awesome year in 2002. Edge had a breakout feud with Kurt Angle. I mean, 3 awesome matches, and then, like I say, I like that title run with Hogan. Thought that was really good. Good feud with Eddie Guerrero. Good tag team with Rey Mysterio. Now a top 3. Now, this is an indication of how good this guy's years was, because he was out for the first 6 months. And of course I'm talking about Chris Benoit. I mean, just showed how good he is that he gets on this list, but he was only there for half of the year. I mean, returned in mid-2002 after breaking his neck in 2001. And after maybe a steady start, he quickly found his feet. I mean, he went to SmackDown, became Intercontinental Champion again, gem with RVD at SummerSlam, obviously refeuded with Kurt Angle that year, producing some classic matches, teaming with Kurt Angle, winning the SmackDown Tag Team titles, awesome stuff. And then number 2, I'll go Brock Lesnar. I mean, there's a question about this later on, which I'll get into, but epic rise of him, coming up from a Raw rookie from developmental to 5 months later becoming the WWE Champion. Along the way, won the King of the Ring, destroyed Hulk Hogan, beat The Rock, beat The Undertaker inside Hell in a Cell. Then by the end of his rookie year, was a 2-time WWE Champion, winning the title at WrestleMania 19. But as I've said before, obviously number 1's no surprise, and that's Kurt Angle. For the reasons I explained earlier, awesome promo work, awesome in-ring stuff. If you remember, I did top 10 Kurt Angle matches of 2002 video. Every match in that video was a 4-star match. There was even 4-star matches that didn't even make the list, so it's got to be Kurt Angle then. Did a lot of your friends stop watching wrestling in 2002? Yeah, I would say a lot of them interest started declining. I mean, I think a lot of them checked out for good in 2003, but 2002, definitely less people were watching wrestling. And then by 2003, I think they all buggered off after that. So yeah, and what have we got? What was your reaction? What was your reaction when hearing Austin walked out? Now, this obviously is a reaction of 2002. I mean, some people don't remember that Austin walked out in June of 2002, yes. But he also had a little quick walkout out after WrestleMania 18. The day after WrestleMania 18, he walked out as well. That's why he wasn't on the original brand split, the original draft show, because his issue hadn't worked out, and then he came back the following week to join the Raw roster. And then, obviously, creative differences, frustration, all that got worse over time, and then he went on this show that he had at WWE.com at the time called Bite This. It was basically an internet show that he had where you had to watch it on your computer, then he ran into that. Twisted about creative, saying the creative sucked and all that, and then a few weeks later, of course, he had the epic walkout of June 2002. I mean, at the time, I was mad at Austin. I mean, I say WWE did a magnificent hatchet job of making Austin looking like the biggest dick in the world. I mean, they really went all out to brainwash us to thinking that Austin was a fucking arsehole, a son of a bitch. How the fuck can he do this and all that? So yeah, at the time I thought he was a dick. Although I would say what gets brushed under the carpet, which deserves a lot more criticism than actually walking out, was a few days later when he gets arrested by the police for beating Deborah, knocking Deborah about. But people don't talk about that one. Some people kind of give Austin a free pass in that one. I mean, he did kind of beat his wife, and that is kind of a big deal. Looking at this now, I would say, obviously Austin's explained his side of it, so I would say Austin did he did the wrong thing for the right reasons. I mean, it was stupid what they asked him to do. I mean, they asked him to put over Brock Lesnar on Raw in a King of the Ring qualifier. No build-up, no nothing. I mean, really? I'm sorry, but that was dumb as fuck. I mean, you're just throwing something away there. I mean, if you had Austin Brock Lesnar over time, built up, and then Austin puts Brock Lesnar over on a pay-per-view, then you stand to make a ton of money on that. But what they try to do, I mean, obviously it was months and months and months of frustration where he just snapped and walked out. But also he was dealing with a lot of injuries at the time. I mean, obviously these injuries made him retire for good in 2002. But I admit he was drinking a lot and his head wasn't in the right place at the time. So at the time I was mad at him and all that, but now I kind of get it. And then what's your excitement level heading to the 4 big pay-per-views? So most of them were actually good, really. I mean, Royal Rumble for the first one, big excitement for that, because that was Triple H's big epic return. And look at that Royal Rumble that they had at the time. I mean, in that Royal Rumble match you had Triple H, Austin, The Undertaker, Kurt Angle, RVD, Booker T, Kane, The Big Show, Mr. Perfect was coming back. And also on the undercard, you had some really important matches there as well. I mean, you had Vince and Ric Flair, which will be Ric Flair's first match back in the WWE in 9 years. His first match since the end of WCW. And Vince matches were always a big deal back then. And then obviously Rock and Jericho for the Undisputed title. So on paper that looked like an exciting show, and it was. WrestleMania, I would say I was excited for it, but I think I was more excited for The Rock versus Hogan, and everything else was like, eh. And basically, so yeah, The Rock and Hogan, that was obviously the big draw, and then, but a lot of that build-up sucked, to be honest with you. I mean, you had Triple H and Jericho in a terrible storyline. Edge and Booker T fighting for shampoo. Yes, I know I've already mentioned that, but still. Actually, the only other match that was how I was excited for was Taker and Ric Flair, but then there was Austin in a mid-card match with Scott Hall. The rest of the card was just, who really gave a shit? And then obviously SummerSlam, big excitement going to that show. I mean, the card was awesome on paper, the card was awesome in execution. But obviously you had the big hot rookie Brock Lesnar going up against The Rock for the Undisputed title. Was so fucking hyped for Triple H and Shawn Michaels, you wouldn't believe. Shawn Michaels was coming back to the ring to face Triple H. This was going to be fucking awesome. You had Rey Mysterio's first WWE pay-per-view match against Kurt Angle. Couldn't wait to see how that turned out. Benoit versus RVD, that was going to be big. So yeah, that was big excitement for that one. And Survivor Series, again, a lot of excitement. On paper, that was a great card. In execution, it was. I mean, particularly the SmackDown stuff. Obviously, you had the Angle of Benoit versus Edge Mysterio versus Los Guerreros at the height of SmackDown 6. Brock Lesnar in the Big Show was booked surprisingly awesomely. Is awesomely a word? Well, it is now. Then there was the appeal of the Elimination Chamber. What the hell was this thing going to be? What did it mean? What did the Elimination Chamber entail? What were we going to see? Then there was Trish and Victoria had a nice little feud going. Billy Kidman and Jamie Noble, that looked pretty interesting on paper. So I was there for the Big Four. This was actually maybe not the best for excitement level. I would say I was probably more excited for all the 1998 ones, but this one was great as well. And then we got Owen Peterson. Since WrestleMania 18 was the first time since 1998 the WWF was held in Canada. Why do you think it took them so long to hold one there again? Answer is, I don't know, to be honest with you. I couldn't tell you. I don't really have an answer for that. I mean, they held television tapings there fairly often, but like, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there was the last pay-per-view before WrestleMania 18 to be held in Canada was, I believe it was in your house. No, in your house rock bottom, I think it was. I think that one was in Vancouver, I think. I can't remember right, because he also had Breakdown there as well, so kind of surprising they didn't have a pay-per-view in Canada in 99, 2000, even 2001. But I hate to say it, I don't know the answer to that one. And we'll go, yeah, this is a good one. This is interesting, and I think you're completely right in what you're saying. What was your reaction to several Hulkamania / New Generation era stars return to the WWE in ring action in WWF in 2002, such as Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Kurt Angle, Shawn Michaels, etc.? Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, because I feel like 2002's really the first year WWE experimented with nostalgia. And what I mean by that, the first time they realised that bringing back old names and pitting them against the new generation, well, not the new generation, but the generation now stars, could be big money. I mean, obviously years like before that, they couldn't really do this because so let's say 97, 98, if WWF wanted to bring guys back from a previous era, they couldn't really do that. And why is that? Because answer is, most of them work at WCW. I'm talking about Hogan, Savage, Piper, Flair, guys like that. Couldn't really bring them back because they were working in WCW. And then obviously guys like Bruno, WWF had so much heat with him, they didn't want to bring him back. And I think Superstar Billy Graham's another one who had a lot of heat, didn't want to bring him back. Now obviously the invasion had happened, WCW died, all these guys are available again, so it was really cool to see them coming. I mean, and obviously like, as years went by, this whole bringing in old-time stars took on a life of its own to the now where sometimes we refer to this era as the part-time era. I mean, however many WrestleManias has been relied on by stars from a past generation to carry it. I mean, they even brought Goldberg back again this year. And also 2002, I was now in my teenage years. I was 15, I would turn 16 later that year. So now I'm watching. I'd been a wrestling fan for 10 years by 2002. And now I'm like thinking, oh, this is cool. So guys from my childhood were coming back. So obviously Hogan, Nash and Hall, Ric Flair. I remember watching him when I first started watching wrestling. As you know, when you mentioned Mr. Perfect, I mean, that was really cool. And obviously the big one, Shawn Michaels. So I really enjoyed that at the time because, like I say, it was guys from my childhood coming back, which I thought was cool and all that. Would you put SummerSlam 2002 above or below in terms of best WWE pay-per-view? Now, I'll say below, but it's definitely number 2, and it's definitely a 10 out of 10 pay-per-view. But as much as I love SummerSlam 2002, I liked WrestleMania 17 better. It's that simple. Not hating on SummerSlam 2002 or anything, far from it. It's just, if I had to pick, I'd pick WrestleMania 17 every single time. Then thoughts on the Un-Americans factions when compared to the Hart Foundation. So yeah, it was a similar storyline. Obviously the Canadians hating America. I feel like, but it wasn't as good in mine, not at all. I mean, it was fine, but couldn't hold a candle to the Hart Foundation in 1997. I mean, none of them were a bigger star as Bret. Obviously, I don't think either of them were as good as Owen or the Bulldog either. They didn't have like as hot challenges. Like obviously, when the Hart Foundation formed, they were feeling for the likes of Steve Austin, the likes of the Legion of Doom, people like that. So it was good, but it was nowhere near as good in my opinion. I mean, to be honest with you, what we got. Ooh, which parts of 2002 still felt like the Attitude Era, and which parts were beginning to define the Ruthless Aggression Era? I'd say the first part of the year still felt, obviously the remnants of the Attitude Era were still there. I mean, you had Stone Cold, The Rock, people like that. The show still looked the same and all that. Then I would say, even after the brand split, Raw were trying to do Attitude Era stuff, such as Ric Flair and Steve Austin, like Austin versus the Authority feud again, which, ironically enough, 15 years later, they're still trying to do that, but that's another story. Obviously, stuff like trying to do edgy stuff, which just didn't work, such as the Katie Vick angle, HLA, the whole stuff with Al Wilson, Dawn Marie, that sort of thing. So stuff like that, but then I would say stuff that felt like the new Ruthless Aggression Era, basically, with the emergence of people like Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton, John Cena coming through, then pushing people like Edge, people like Eddie Guerrero. Obviously, most of this, like the SmackDown 6 stuff, all looked like new stuff, which was cool. So I'd say the new Ruthless Aggression Era really took shape the second half of 2002. So that, yeah, and then do we have now? We're getting down to the last few, but we're getting there, people. We're getting there. It's been a long video, but we're getting there now. We've got Lonely Fanboy 48. Do you miss the WWF name? Yes, I do. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've got used to WWE over the years, but honestly, it did take me a long time to get there. And I have learned to talk about things in correct tense. So if I'm talking about something that's happened from May 2002 onwards, I'll say WWE, but if I say anything pre that, I'll always call it WWF. And in my heart of hearts, I'll always think of it as the World Wrestling Federation, the WWF. I mean, don't get me wrong, I've got no problem with calling it WWE and all that, but in my heart, it'll always be the WWF. But yes, I do miss the WWF name. I mean, it's just a shame the name change had to happen, but it's what it is. I mean, they had a battle in court. The World Wildlife Fund won. WWE changed the name, but it's whatever. I mean, it's not like it crippled the company or anything like that. I mean, yeah, it probably was a massive pain in the arse rebranding everything, and yeah, it must have been a pain in the arse. Because if you remember, like about the first month of it being the WWE, you'd see guys cutting promos, and they kept slipping in WWF by accident instead of WWE. And it's kind of funny as well. Another way, this is unrelated, but do you remember when Bret Hart came back? He was a Raw general manager in 2010. I remember a promo he cut shortly after he became the general manager. Even like 8 years later, Bret accidentally slipped in the WWF by accident. So yeah. But yeah, I miss it. I'm not going to lie, I do miss the name of WWF. And what have we got? Was the Royal Rumble match great? Yeah, I think it was a great Royal Rumble match. Do I think it was one of the absolute best Royal Rumble matches ever? No, I don't. I mean, a lot of people do, but I don't think it's one of the absolute best Royal Rumble matches. But it is a great Rumble overall. I mean, you had early stuff like The Undertaker dominating, the awesome moment of Maven eliminating The Undertaker, Triple H and Austin battling it out, then the ring filling up, and then of course Triple H won it. So, and also actually, I still believe it is the longest 30-man Royal Rumble ever, about 67, 68 minutes or something like that. Then what have we got? What is the most shocking moment of 2002 now? I alluded to this one earlier in the video, but probably the easiest answer I've got all day, and the most shocking moment has to be Eric Bischoff making his WWE debut. I mean, that was just like, whoa. I mean, if I've talked about this earlier, so we can, if you don't remember what I said, you can go back, rewind the video, find it there. But wow, he was Eric Bischoff standing in the WWE ring on Monday Night Raw, the very show he tried to compete with, the very show he tried to put off the air. Wow. Never thought in a million years I would ever see Bischoff in WWE. Just thought, no way Vince would go for that. I mean, too much bad blood, not a fucking chance. Not a chance in the world. What we got? Worst match of WrestleMania 18, I would probably say. Easily, probably Goldust Maven hardcore title match. That was pretty bad. It was just a shitty 3-4 minute match, which ended in a no contest and all that. But that was awful. Thought a close contender, probably Austin and Scott Hall. That was pretty bad. But Goldust Maven then. What was the best match between Triple H and Shawn Michaels that year? Oh, dude, not even close. Fucking SummerSlam 2002. Sorry, but not a chance the Armageddon match was even remotely close to being as good as the SummerSlam match. So yeah, easily the SummerSlam match by a mile. Then we got next questions. Prince of Strong Style 9v2, and he's a good one. But we haven't, not many people have talked about this promotion. The questions have been mostly WWE. How would Christopher Daniels have fared as Ring of Honor champion for a few months instead of Xavier? Ultimately dropped this to Samoa Joe and either Night of Champions or later down the line. I mean, oh god, yes. So Ring of Honor early days, I mean, it was built on amazing in-ring action and all that. To this day, it baffled me that they put the world title on Xavier. I mean, so the idea of Ring of Honor, if you're one of the best wrestlers, you'd be the world champion. So that's kind of how the promotion was. So for some reason, they put the world title on probably the most average wrestler they had at the time, Xavier. And it was just shit. I mean, Xavier was overshadowed by at least 8 guys on the roster. I mean, you're thinking guys who were better than him: Loki, Daniels, Samoa Joe, Bryan Danielson, AJ Styles, Paul London, people like that. Brian Kendrick, Doug Williams. So why the hell, to this day, I just don't understand why they put the belt on Xavier. Obviously, Loki was the first champion, then Xavier the second champion, and then obviously he lost the title to Samoa Joe in 2003, and again, maybe we'll talk about 2003 one day, but yeah, I think Christopher Daniels would have been far the better choice. I mean, it was up to me. I think Daniels would have been a far better Ring of Honor champion at the time. I mean, it took him 15 years to get the bloody title, but definitely should have had it in 2002, would have made a far superior champion to Xavier. He was probably the best character Ring of Honor had. I mean, say guys like Danielson and Loki were probably better wrestlers than Christopher Daniels, but Daniels wasn't far behind, but I think he had far superior mic skills than that to either of them. So if he'd have took the title from Loki whenever he did, I can't remember the show Xavier won the title, and then obviously even I think Samoa Joe beating Daniels for the title would have been a much bigger deal as well. It would have been a better storyline, because if you remember, Samoa Joe was originally brought into Ring of Honor to be the bodyguard, well, not the bodyguard, but the assassin of Christopher Daniels, to take out people and stuff like that. Then, 10 words, what the fuck happened to Raw during the brand split? A lot of things happened. I mean, wasn't good, was it? I mean, obviously the first part of the brand split was, you had obviously one of the big picks of the brand split, of course, was the NWO. They were number 2 pick behind The Undertaker. But that fell apart fairly quickly because Nash got injured. And obviously playing right in hell, which we're going to get to in a minute. Scott Hall ended up getting fired for that. And then, so that all went fucked up. Then Austin walked out, so that fucked everything up. Then after the brand split, we got a Triple H's Reign of Terror, which was awful. I mean, people talk about that for years. Yes, if you weren't there, it was as bad as people say. Trust me. Just trust me on that one. Then obviously stuff like the Katie Vick angle, which, yes, don't worry boys and girls, that's coming up. We'll get to that. The HLA stuff and all that. Then, yeah, it was just bad. So what happened to it? A lot of bad things happened to it, which made it a bad show. Although, ironically enough, I think Raw, I think it's a hell of a lot better than Raw in 2017. Just throwing that out there. But yeah, what have we got? Based on whatever footage you've seen from them during this year, most likely be the year one documentary for some teenage during this year. And did they really look like they had a chance to survive or fail? Yeah, TNA, first year TNA was a weird one. I mean, obviously they formed in 2003, and it was a weird mismatch of random shit. I mean, on one hand, you had awesome X Division. I mean, the X Division really carried it in the beginning stages. I mean, people were just raving about these matches that AJ Styles, Low King, and Jerry Lynn were having. And then people like Maze and Red and stuff like that. Elix Skipper, people like that. And then you had weird stuff like fucking the Johnsons. Who were the Johnsons, you ask? Well, do you remember Jim and I in WWE in 2006? Those big bald twins. Well, he previously had a run in TNA where they, I kid you not, if you don't believe me, YouTube it, where they were dressed to look like giant penises called the Johnsons. Did you get it? Penis Johnson. Yeah, it was about as hilarious as it sounds. And yes, if you're wondering, Vince Russo was booking TNA early on. He was. And we ought to have. There was a big fat Rikishi ripoff called Cheeks, a big fat black guy. Was as bad as it sounds. Oh god. And then just some terrible gimmicks. Some of the good and the bad. I mean, you had like Ken Shamrock was the world champion. Then Ron Killings was actually interesting world champion, I thought. He did alright for himself. And obviously not long before that, Jeff Jarrett took the belt, and yes, Jeff Jarrett was part owner, so yes, that's why he was on TNA on top for too long. But then some of the guys he brought in were clearly in as WWE rejects. I mean, Scott Hall was there briefly, the Road Dogg, David Flair, Brian Christopher, and people like that. So at times it looked like it could be a great product, but pretty much the first year TNA, obviously business-wise, they nearly collapsed a few times that year. And funny enough now how you can say she maybe ruined TNA in later years, but really was Dixie Carter and Panda Renji who saved the company when they bought a big stake in it in 2002. I mean, if that hadn't happened, TNA wouldn't have survived 2002. I mean, granted, Dixie probably ruined the company later on, but it looked like. So I always thought like, it could be successful in its own right, but no way that I think, yeah, this is not going to challenge WWE. It was never, and it never has. Let's be honest. Never truly will be competition for the WWE, and that's a shame because, let's say, in the last 16 years, one of the biggest things wrong in wrestling is no competition. Oh, right. Just need a minute to compose myself before I talk about this. Right, this is a good question. Plane ride from hell. Tell the stories, want a question, here it is. What the hell happened, and did it hurt certain guys, status of the company, or was it just an incident that happened to be hilarious with little consequences? So I'm going to try and explain. So if you ever heard from the plane ride for hell and you're thinking, what the hell was that? So due to the insurrection 2002 happened in England, London. And back in those days, they would fly to England on the Saturday, do the show, and then fly back to the US to do Raw the next Monday. Now, this is what happens when you have a chartered flight, a bunch of overgrown teenagers, and copious amounts of alcohol, free alcohol, just flowing on the plane ride. Oh, and did I mention a plane ride from America to England about 7-8 hours? So, yeah. Wow, this is probably one of the most famous backstage stories in WWE history. This was just fucking crazy shit. I mean, obviously a lot of the wrestlers are like overgrown children sometimes. I mean, they're adults, but when they get drinking, they act like a bunch of high school 18-year-olds again. It was a Raw crew, so it was the Raw guys at the time. And it was just a bunch of guys getting absolutely off the fucking tits, drinking fucking loads, and loads of horrible random shit happened. Such as Ric Flair, being the nature boy that he is, I mean, Ric Flair getting naked in his robe, going down the aisle doing a striptease, hassling the flight attendants, allegedly walking around with his dick out, getting the flight attendants to touch his dick and all that. This is sort of stuff that Ric Flair did all the time back in the day, but obviously it's 2002 now. What Ric Flair didn't realise, you can't behave like that anymore. I mean, that's the only thing Ric Flair did wrong, but Ric Flair was being the nature boy, and you've all heard the stories about that over the years. I'm sure they're all absolutely true. So Ric Flair was hassling flight attendants. Scott Hall was absolutely hammered from this flight. Apparently he'd been pretty drunk all that tour. And Ric Flair, like Scott Hall, was supposedly harassing the flight attendants and stuff like that. They even both Flair, Hall and WWE got sued by them later on over it. I think Scott Hall passed out on the flight and stuff like that. He ended up getting, well, obviously it affected his status of the company because he got fired. Now, Kurt Hennig and Brock Lesnar had an impromptu amateur wrestler match on the flight. I mean, Kurt Hennig got absolutely hammered and tried to challenge Brock Lesnar to a wrestling fight. I mean, Lord knows, guys, put my hand up, I'm no saint. I've had an experience of alcohol in the past. Sometimes I even go over the top. I mean, sure, some lads in here, you can vouch for it. You've been out in a session, it just goes too far sometimes, doesn't it? I'm sure you've all done it before. You're going out for a couple of pints and then you end up coming back at about 2 o'clock in the morning with limited walking ability. Sometimes you get an argument, sometimes drinking session just goes too far. But how fucking hammered must you be? Like, seriously, how hammered must you be to think it's a good idea to tackle Brock Lesnar? And at the time, Brock Lesnar was 24-year-old, 290 pound, built like a brick shithouse amateur wrestler who had just won the NCAA championship 2 years earlier. I mean, you have to be pretty fucking hammered to think that was a good idea. So eventually Brock snapped, and then him and Kurt Hennig were wrestling the aisle. Some people suggest that they were going dangerously close to the door. Even some people feared that the door was going to fly open, which that would have been a fucking scandal, wouldn't it? So, and as a result of that, Kurt Hennig ended up getting fired. And then, for some reason, Michael Hayes, who was a road agent, was hammered along with Bradshaw. Apparently, Hayes had been annoying Bradshaw throughout the flight. Then obviously it ended up with JBL Bradshaw decking Michael Hayes, knocking him out. Although some people suggest that Michael Hayes just passed out because he was hammered. Also allegedly on that flight, Michael Hayes went for a piss, and then being so pissed he missed the toilet and allegedly almost pissed on Linda McMahon. Or that might have been another time. I can't remember, but I have heard that story. So then now while Michael Hayes has passed out, X-Pac decides in his infinite wisdom to cut Michael Hayes' ponytail off. So when Michael Hayes has passed out, because obviously it's kind of funny over the years, when Michael Hayes got older and he tried to still have the Freebird hair, but he looks pretty ridiculous, doesn't he? I mean, when he has it's so thin on top and then he has the Freebird flowing hair, and he had it in a ponytail that day, so X-Pac cut it off, and then X-Pac's owned up to this, but people weren't sure who it was at the time. Then what he did later on is he actually put it on there. He put it on the wall and wrote on the doorfee. Then apparently Hayes wakes up, doesn't know what happens. For some reason blames Jerry Briscoe for it and tries to start a fight with Jerry Briscoe. So this is just all sorts of weird shit. Goldust was on the PA system, hammered, singing songs for his ex-wife Terry, really upsetting her. I think I heard that Jim Ross had to send Goldust back to his seat. So wow. And this is all stuff I've heard over the years on the internet. I've heard just incredible talk about it. X-Pac's talked about it. A few different guys have talked about it. Yeah, this is what happens when you have a free bar and a big flight home from England with a load of overgrown teenagers. Just, yeah, this all happened. I have covered pretty much everything. There's probably one or two more daft stories that supposedly happened that I haven't talked about, but I hope I haven't left anything out. If I have left anything out, feel free to comment in the section below. And hidden gems and classics from 2002, WWF, Ring of Honor, and NWA TNA. So let's go through WWE ones first. I say hidden gems and classics. I would say, even though it was a WrestleMania match and it was a streak match, still feel it gets underrated and deserves a bit more attention. Undertaker versus Ric Flair from WrestleMania. Thought that was a great match. Tajiri and Billy Kidman from Backlash, really enjoyed that match. Thought that was a really enjoyable match. Because they had maybe better matches and more high profile matches, Kurt Angle and Edge had a really good match that night. A great match actually. I just feel like the Judgment Day match and maybe even the cage match was better, but they had a fantastic match that night. What else have we got that I can think of? Eddie and RVD, pretty much all their pay-per-view matches were really good. Yeah, let's go back. Goldust RVD from No Way Out. Thought that was a really enjoyable match, to be honest. What else? Let's have a think. Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero versus Bubba and Spike Dudley from Vengeance. Oh, that was quite enjoyable. I can't remember the date of this, but August 2002 SmackDown, Chris Benoit versus The Rock. They had another match that they hadn't had a match in since 2000. That was really, really good. To be honest. RVD Tommy Dreamer the night after SummerSlam, where RVD unified the hardcore title. Rob Van Dam, Chris Benoit, SummerSlam 2002. Such an underrated match that was. I think because the card was so huge and memorable and great, that match gets forgotten about. What, Rebellion 2002? Wait, it was Brock Lesnar versus Edge, really, wasn't it? It was advertised as Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman versus Edge, but I don't even think Heyman ever got in the ring, so Brock Lesnar and Edge had a really good WWE title match. Really underrated stuff. Trish and Victoria hardcore match at Survivor Series. That's definitely a match worth checking out if you haven't seen it. Global Warming Tour. A really interesting match. Brock Lesnar versus The Rock versus Triple H. That's just one of the most random, interesting WWE triple threat matches of all time. Fatal 4-Way Armageddon, Jericho and Christian versus Booker T and Goldust versus Lance Storm and William Regal versus the Dudley Boys. I like that match a lot. With Booker T and Goldust becoming the World Tag Team Champions. See if I can think of anything else. Not really a great match or anything, but just interesting that it happened and definitely worth checking out. Shawn Michaels versus Rob Van Dam from Raw in November. Is either November or December 2002? I can't remember. It was during Shawn's 3-week world title run from Survivor Series in Armageddon. Like I say, it wasn't that great of a match or anything, but just really cool that it actually happened. Definitely worth checking out if you haven't seen it. And then, on the same token, the night after Vengeance 2002, The Rock and Eddie Guerrero main event that Raw. Now that wasn't a fantastic match or anything like that. It was a good TV match, but definitely worth watching. It's one of those cool dream matches that you might not know actually happened that happened. Let's go TNA. Haven't seen a ton of matches from TNA during that time, so not real sure. You can just YouTube any of the AJ Styles Jerry Lynn matches. They were young in AJ's career, but trust me, I don't think AJ would have been half the wrestler he was if he hadn't have been wrestling Jerry Lynn. I really don't. At the time, Jerry Lynn really was the father of the X Division, in my opinion. He had all these young guys coming through at the time, and then you had this grizzled veteran like Jerry Lynn who had been let go from the WWE, had a point to prove, and he really taught the likes of Styles low key. Especially AJ Styles. That was really AJ Styles' breakout feud in the US, in my opinion. That feud with Jerry Lynn in 2002. You could make a case for Jerry Lynn being one of the best workers in the business at the time, so any of their matches really would be cool to watch. Can't really think of anything else as an underrated gem. to be honest with you. Then Ring of Honor, always the go-to one I always go to. Samoa Joe, low-key fight without honour. Samoa Joe's first Ring of Honor match. That was a classic in my opinion. I mean, that was just a stiff, realistic, brutal match. I enjoyed the hell out of it anyway. I thought it was really good. Really, really good. And what else? Oh, I can't remember what show it was, but the street fight Paul London and Michael Shane had. That was a really memorable match. Speaking of Paul London, everyone talks about the epic encounter in 2003, but there was a show called Night of the Butcher, where I think that was a show Abdul the Butcher came in, where Paul London and Bryan Danielson had one of the early matches. That was a really good match. Great match, actually. I don't know if this match is underrated or not, but it's a match that I feel everyone should see because it really is interesting. And that's crowning a champion in what I kid you not, a fatal 4-way Iron Man match. Now, I think that's the only time I've ever seen a multi-man Iron Man match. And that the people who were in it was Loki, Doug Williams, Christopher Daniels, Spanky. Now, like I said, I'm not sure if it's underrated or not, but I just want to throw that out there as an interesting match that I feel people should see. And another match, it wasn't any of these companies, but I don't know how many people have seen this, but IWA Mid-South, an interesting matches out there. A triple threat match with Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio versus CM Punk. Now, this was in between Eddie Guerrero's WWE stint. Got fired in November 2001, came back in April 2002. But in between that time, Eddie Guerrero was working independence. Hell, he even worked the first 2 Ring of Honor shows, I think. First two or three, anyway. He was on the first Ring of Honor show, wrestling Super Crazy. Actually, that match might be worth checking out, actually. And then Rey Mysterio was in between WCW and the WWF. I mean, he didn't sign for WWF right away. Sat out his WCW contract and then wrestled a little bit before coming back to the WWE. And then obviously CM Punk was an independent wrestler coming up at the time, so and obviously became a huge star later on. So that's just an interesting one to see. And Rey Mysterio is still unmasked here as well, which is interesting. But definitely worth checking those matches out. Now, how many people do we have left? There's another 2-hour plus video, bloody hell. We've got 3 people left. No, 4 people left actually. We've got Michael Shepherdson. Top 5 worst pay-per-views in brackets you can include UK pay-per-views, so I'd say. Worst show, it's good, like I said, it's funny. There wasn't that many awful shows in 2002, pay-per-view wise. So few of these shows in this list are actually pretty decent shows by normal standards. But I say worst show, No Way Out. Didn't really like that show at all. And second worst, if we're including UK pay-per-views, let's put Insurrection on there. That was I mean, I can't even remember. Eddie and RVD had a good match. Triple H and The Undertaker was a main event, I think. I can't even remember. Austin fight the Big Show, I think, on that show. But yeah, that wasn't a very good show. Then what else can we? Probably number 3, sadly, WrestleMania 18, which is sad it's on there because it's WrestleMania. And for me, WrestleMania should never be one of your worst pay-per-views of the year. But it was this year. I mean, talk about WrestleMania 18 a lot in the past. That wasn't a very good show. Then I would say, what else? What else can we put on there? Judgment Day. I actually thought Judgment Day was a pretty good show, to be fair. But compared to the other 2002 shows, it wasn't that good. I mean, you had 2 great matches: Kurt Angle versus Edge, Triple H versus Chris Jericho inside Hell in a Cell. Actually, let's just go back to that. When I talk about the underrated gems, I should have really mentioned that match. That's a great Hell in a Cell match, actually. Then Eddie Guerrero versus RVD, but then you got stuff like Austin versus The Big Show and Ric Flair, which wasn't very good. Trish Stratus, Stacey Keebler was pretty crap. Rikishi and Rico versus Billy and Chuck wasn't very good. Then the main event pretty much sucked between Hogan and The Undertaker. Then I'll probably say number 5. And again, I thought this was by normal standards, this was actually a pretty good show. Backlash. I mean, you had really good stuff like Tajiri Jamie, couldn't stutter on that. Tajiri Billy Kidman, Kurt Angle versus Edge, RVD versus Eddie Guerrero. And although the match wasn't up to much, we had Hollywood Hogan winning the world title then. But Austin the Undertaker was probably the worst match that they ever had together. Scott Hall and Bradshaw was bad. Trish Stratus and Jazz was just decent. Oh, another thing on that show, Brock Lesnar's first match against Jeff Hardy, which is a pretty good squash match, actually, to be fair. And then what else? What else was on there? Try and have a think. Billy and Chuck versus Al Snow and Maven was So, yeah. Then what have we got? Where are we? Top 5 matches of the year. So, now this is a reflection of how good 2002 was. So, let's have a... Just putting it together. I saw this match is number 5. Should tell you how good the rest of the matches were. Number 5, 2 out of 3 falls. SmackDown, November 7th, 2002. Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit versus Edge and Rey Mysterio. I mean, that was an awesome follow up to the classic No Mercy match. Which, trust me, that's going to come up in this in a sec. That's obviously higher than number 5. That was just a fantastic match. One of the best tag team matches on free television you'll ever see. Actually went with 4 fall for some reason. I can't remember why. There may have been a double pin or something like that. But went with 4 fall and Edge and Mysterio win the tag team titles. Now number 4. Ring of Honor Round Robin Challenge main event. American Dragon Bryan Danielson versus Loki. This was a fucking stiff shit. Fucking fantastic match. Really worth checking out. If you haven't seen it, just brutal match. Awesome match for those guys at that stage of their careers as well. They were both like really young guys at the time. Already been wrestling 2 or 3 years. Should definitely check that one out. And then, sorry. Right, number 3. And it's hard to put this at number 3 because obviously the other 2 were so good. Eddie Guerrero versus Edge for the no disqualification match, September 26, 2002 edition of SmackDown. Recently reviewed that show. That's a fucking classic match right there. One of the best matches in SmackDown history. Definitely top 3 SmackDown match ever at worst. Possibly even the best to some people, but for me I thought Austin Benoit was slightly better. But wow, that was just a fantastic match. And then number 2, Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit versus Edge and Rey Mysterio, No Mercy. 5-star match for sure. Probably the best straight up tag team match I've ever seen in my life. Never seen any of these Japan matches that people jerk off over. So, but for me, this match, what a match. Absolutely tremendous. Hashtag tremendous. Amazing match, 5-star match. Now, if that's number 2, what the hell? How good's number 1? And number 1 is, of course, to no surprise, Shawn Michaels Triple H unsanctioned fight, SummerSlam 2002. Wow. This is one of the greatest matches of all time in my opinion. Probably my top 10 personal favourites ever, I would say. Yeah, top 10 personal favourite matches ever. Have to say that for sure. Wow. Amazing story of Shawn Michaels coming back after all these years to fight Triple H. The unsanctioned stipulation, the brawl, the weapons, the selling, and Shawn Michaels just coming back and being the showstopper once again after being gone for 4 years, not missing a beat. Amazing match, one of the best matches both guys ever had in their careers. Really is 5 stars. One of my personal favourite WWE matches ever. Written out, that's absolutely ever. Then we go. Oh, you son of a bitch. You son of a bitch. Why? Thoughts on Katie Vick. Why do this to me? Why? Why make me do all this, you horrible, horrible man? Just kidding, you're alright, really. Oh, God. Katie Vick. Those 2 words, 15 years on, still send shivers down my spine. Probably, if not the worst, one of the worst storylines that the WWE has ever done. And I mean ever done. And WWE has done some horrible ones over the years, haven't they? Some really bad ones. But this one, so I'm gonna have to explain it to you to give me thoughts. So the storyline went a little like this. Kane's the Intercontinental Champion. and he was feuding with Triple H, and they were going to have a match at No Mercy to unify the titles. Not even an elaborate storyline, right? I mean, you could just say the Intercontinental Champion's fighting the World Champion, and it's about competition, and that's fine, right? Apparently not. So, one night on Raw, Triple H said that he'd been digging up secrets about Kane's past, and he asked Kane how Katie Vick was, and revealed that Katie Vick was somebody Kane that had murdered in the past, like 10 years ago, so in 1992. So, Kane was a murderer, apparently. Now, oh God. So, then Kane explained the next week that 10 years ago, Kane was out in a party, and he had a friend named Katie Vick. Katie had a few drinks, so Kane offered to drive her home that night. Then obviously they were out driving. I can't remember what he said. He swerved. I think it was an animal on the road or something like that. So Kane tried to swerve the car, crashed the car, and then killed his best friend, Katie Vick. Now, that'll be bad. That's not too bad in itself, but now you've got to remember that previously this contradicts everything we were told about Kane's history. Obviously, the history of Kane was he was burnt alive by his brother, the Undertaker, way back when he was a kid. And he was a recluse all of his life, known only to his father, Paul Bearer. And he was recluse, and then he was in a lot of mental institutions. So, if Kane's a burn victim who was a recluse all of his life, up until 1997 when he came back to fight the Undertaker, why does Kane have friends and go to a party and drives a car if he's been recluse all of his life and then in mental institutions? So, right off the bat, it's like, whoever wrote this shit, and I would honest to God love to know who was actually responsible for this and who wrote this crap. First of all, they didn't do the research and do the history, because if they did, they would have known Kane's history, that he was a recluse all of his life. So, bad marks there. So, not only that, Triple H made the claim that Kane's semen was found in... Oh, God. I can't even believe I'm saying this on YouTube. I feel like an idiot saying this, but this is all true. I mean, those Raw from 2002 on the network, so if you don't believe me, go and watch them. Oh, fuck's sake. So Kane said... Triple H claimed that Kane's semen was found in Katie's body when they did the autopsy. Oh, God. Oh, my God. So, Triple H said, did you do it while she was alive, or did you wait till she was dead before you did it? So not only now is Kane being accused of being a murderer, he's now being accused of being a necrophiliac as well. So, to illustrate this point, they did a segment on Raw. Oh my God, why do you make me relive this? So they did a segment on Raw. Oh God, I just feel so wrong saying this. They did a segment on Raw where there was a mannequin in a church, in a casket, and then Triple H entered the scene wearing a Kane mask. And to illustrate his point, he simulated sex with a fucking dummy in a church on Raw. Oh God. You think I'm making this shit up? This actually happened. I'm not joking. I'm not high on drugs. I'm not tripping and making stuff up. This really happened. So yeah, Triple H shags the dead body. Oh God. Oh, it's bad. So after all that, you're thinking, well, Kane's been verbally humiliated. He's being accused of murder. He's being accused of having sex with dead bodies. He's going to beat Triple H and get his revenge at No Mercy, right? Wrong. So Triple H defeats Kane at No Mercy, wins the World Intercontinental titles. So not only has Triple H made Kane look like a dickhead during the build-up, he actually beat him in the match. And that's right there is a problem with Triple H with the Reign of Terror. He would run down guys in the build-up, and then he would beat them to reinforce his point. I mean, same thing happened with Booker T when he pretty much borderline racially abused him and then beat him, which, oh God. Oh, it was just so terrible. I mean, oh, honestly, this has got to be one of the worst angles I've ever seen. I mean, I'm all for doing edgy stuff and all that, but how the fuck's parents supposed to explain to the kid what Triple H is doing? I mean, ugh, just so awful. Really, just one of the most offensive, disgusting storylines in WWE history. Just terrible, absolutely fucking terrible. There we are. What's do you think this is the best year for WWE for in-ring work? I would say no, but I would probably go 2001 slightly, but we'll say that 2 year period, 2001, 2002, obviously the best in-ring work they've ever done. I mean, I would say up and down the card, in-ring work's better now, but the best stuff then doesn't compare to the best stuff now. I mean, the best stuff now, it's not Kurt Angle, it's not Chris Benoit, it's not Eddie Guerrero, it's not Rey Mysterio, it's not Shawn Michaels and all that. This is an awesome in-ring year, but I feel like 2001 was slightly better. I mean, 2001 you had Austin Rock WrestleMania, Austin Triple H No Way Out, Austin Angle SummerSlam, Austin Benoit, Rock and Chris Jericho at No Mercy, Benoit and Jericho at the Raw Rumble, so Benoit and Jericho versus Austin Triple H on Raw, so gotta go 2001 slightly. What are the best and worst parts of Raw and SmackDown? So I'll say Raw, the worst part was probably the Austin Ric Flair feud with the NWO early on. Stuff like obviously the Katie Vick, which I don't want to get into again. I went through that just, haven't I? I'm not going through that again. You can bug off. The HLA Hot Lesbian Action shit. Fucking, oh god. Triple H's reign of terror as world champion. Stuff like that. Best stuff, I'll say probably Taker's undisputed title reign. That was really good. Undertaker versus Jeff Hardy's mini feud and Undertaker's title reign. Where do we go? Probably just Chris Jericho in general, I would say. Chris Jericho in general. RVD Eddie Guerrero's rivalry, thought that was really good. So stuff like that really. SmackDown, say the worst bits. Not that many bad things, I would say. The Al Wilson, Tori Wilson, Dawn Marie storyline. Although that one kind of bled into 2003 as well. Just thought I was included. Sudden push of A-Train out of nowhere. That was just like, what? In late 2002, that was just like pretty shit, to be honest with you. Not much really. I mean, can't think of much actively awful stuff on SmackDown during that time. Most of it was pretty good, to be fair. And obviously, best stuff: Brock Lesnar versus The Undertaker rivalry, SmackDown 6, all those great matches and all that sort of thing. Edge and Kurt Angle feud, Hogan and Edge's tag team. That was really, really fun. John Cena's WWE debut against Kurt Angle. Obviously, knowing what Cena's got to now, that's probably a classic WWE moment, in fairness. So stuff like that, really. Then we've got the next set of questions come from Maximus 4587. Top 5 SmackDown matches of 2002. So put my brain back on and go back. So let's have a think. Which three did I pick? Okay, number 5, we've got to go with Edge versus Rey Mysterio versus Kurt Angle from Rey Mysterio versus Chris Benoit versus Kurt Angle, from September 26, 2002. That's a genuine classic right there, in my opinion. Awesome match. Then, can't remember the exact date, but Edge and Kurt Angle's cage match from May. I think it was like May 30th or something like that. That's an awesome match, a great feud ender. Awesome spot where Angle running at Edge. Edge is on the top rope. Edge comes off with a top rope spear. Brilliant. Number 3, Kurt Angle versus Chris Benoit versus Eddie Guerrero versus Edge from the December 5 edition of SmackDown. 4-way elimination match for the number 1 contendership match. Awesome match right there. So many fantastic near falls, especially when it came down to Kurt Angle and Edge. Amazing. Then obviously number 2, Angle and Benoit versus Edge and Rey Mysterio, 2 out of 3 falls. November the 7th edition of SmackDown. And of course, as a number 1, of course, Edge versus Eddie Guerrero, September 26, 2002. Then what do we have? Most underrated match of 2002. Probably because there was loads of awesome matches out here, and this one doesn't get talked about. And these two guys had like a much more better match at the Royal Rumble 2003, and maybe even WrestleMania X7. Kurt Angle versus Chris Benoit, no mercy, Unforgiven 2002. That's a classic. That really is a classic wrestling match. One of the best wrestling matches you've ever had. I mean, it's a 4.5-star match in my book, but when great matches come up, that one rarely comes up. Wait, really? They've got 3 most underrated wrestlers in 2002. So, obviously, before I answered Jamie Noble as number 1, so we'll keep him at number 1. Number 2, Hardcore Holly. Always thought he was a solid in-ring performer. Good look, deep, good size, pretty solid talker. Always thought he probably deserved a bigger push in his career than he got. And then number 3, say Val Venus / Chief Morley. Again, good look, good size, good worker, good talker. Obviously, the Val Venus gimmick had ran its course in 2002. So that held him back, but he had a chance to break out as Chief Morley, and he did for a while, and then he just went back to Val Venus in 2003, so that's a shame. So Jamie Noble, Hardcore Holly, Val Venus. Then what do we have? Worst angle / feud of 2002, WWE, excluding Katie Vick. Thank you for excluding Katie Vick. So I'd probably say second worst. Probably the Chris Jericho Triple H WrestleMania 18 build-up. That was just bad. And this was your WrestleMania main event as well. So you had Chris Jericho, who was a weak champion at the time, and didn't have much credibility going as champion. And he was facing Triple H at WrestleMania. I mean, at that point it was already obvious that Triple H was going to go over and take the title back. But you could have at least tried to make Jericho look good, but you didn't. First up, there was a potentially interesting storyline between Triple H and Stephanie McMahon being allies, which at first glance, just I think the chemistry just wasn't there as partners. But Jericho and Stephanie had awesome chemistry as opponents, but as partners not so much. But the original idea Jericho had was to have an affair with Stephanie, but Triple H nixed that, didn't want to do that. So Stephanie was Jericho's manager. And then the feud quickly escalated. Triple H and Stephanie McMahon feuding, going to WrestleMania 18. Oh yeah, by the way, Chris Jericho's the undisputed champion, whatever. That was kind of how it felt. I mean, so basically, Chris Jericho was a third wheel in a feud between Triple H and Stephanie McMahon going to WrestleMania that year. Jericho looked so weak. They did just bad, So I'll probably go with that one, to be honest. And what do we have? Best non-WWE match of 2002. Bryan Danielson, low-key, as a round-robin challenge, Ring of Honor. Like I said earlier, that's a classic match. Definitely see that match if you haven't checked it out. I mean, this is the first Ring of Honor show had an awesome match when the era of Honor begins. Danielson, low-key, and American Dragon. This was the second Ring of Honor show, so those two matches really set the tone for what Ring of Honor would become. And like I say, this was really young in both guys' careers. I mean, both guys are early 20s at the time. Only been wrestling 2 or 3 years, so it was just impressive they had such a quality match at that stage of their careers. I think even 15 years later, it still is one of the best matches Ring of Honor ever did. Even one of Danielson's in between top 5 and top 10, I would say, Ring of Honor matches. Because obviously I feel like once it became really awesome, he had better matches than this, with the likes of Nigel McGuinness and Kenta and people like that. But this match was fucking awesome. There we go. We're getting towards the end now, down to the nitty gritty. We've got 2 sets of questions left. Silver and Style. What do you think it would have taken to do a title reign, him overall as a heel? I really like the Undertaker's undisputed title reign. I thought it was a good title reign. And him as a heel especially, I thought was brilliant. I think 2001 had been a shitty year for him. That heel turn in late 2001 helped reinvent him a little bit. Then he cut his hair short as well, which sometimes little things like that make a big difference. This him changing his look up with the short hair now. He changed his persona. He was a bullying heel now. He was big evil. He was really good. I mean, he had a good feud with Ric Flair. He was an intimidating bastard. Yeah, his title reign from 2 months for a 2 month title reign I thought was really good. I mean, this was at a time where the Raw and the champion was both on Raw and SmackDown, which is how it should be today, but that's another issue. I mean, I remember he had a really good match with Orton in 2002. Well, not a really good match, but a good match for the Undisputed title. I mean, obviously, in the same week, he had a great ladder match with Jeff Hardy on July the 1st, Raw. Then on July the 4th, SmackDown. Had a really good wrestler match with Kurt Angle. Then he dropped the title to The Rock, Vengeance. So I feel like he did a very good job in that run. And I really like The Undertaker as a big evil heel. I feel that's probably one of the most underrated runs of his entire career, to be honest with you. Do you think the hardcore title is retired at appropriate time? Or would you prefer them to keep it round as an active title? No, I think it was right. I think it was the right time. I mean, hardcore title had been an interesting title at one time, especially in 99, 2000, especially when they did the 24/7 rule in 2000. I feel like it really picked up then, but by 2002 I think the formula had grown stale. There was too many titles going around. I just feel like the hardcore title had outlived its usefulness, and it was the absolute right decision to get rid of it, in my opinion. And what do we have now? How long do you think the NWO stuff would have lasted in WWE? Stuff like Hall getting released, Nash getting injured, etc. hadn't occurred. What would it have been like if they stuck around longer? See, I don't really like that, because it's like these things did happen, so it's just all what ifs and buts. Like obviously Nash getting injured hurt and Scott Hall getting released. But let's face it, they didn't exactly book the NWO angle so well. I think the big factor you've just completely missed here, in my opinion, one of the biggest factors you've just missed here in this question is Hulk Hogan was just so popular as a face that he couldn't be in the NWO anymore. So once Hogan left, then it was just Hall, Nash, and then he brought X-Pac in. But let's be fair, good as a worker I think X-Pac is, and how underrated talent I think he is, he's really not a good replacement for Hogan, is he really? And so I don't think the NWO angle is ever going to last long, because obviously WrestleMania happened, Austin lost to Scott Hall, Hogan lost to The Rock and then turned face, so you hadn't really gotten off to a hot start. And obviously, so if Nash and Hall had stuck around with X-Pac, then maybe Broughton and Shawn, could it have lasted a bit longer? Maybe, but you look at WWE's past history as well. I mean, WWE's track record of WCW creation isn't good, is it? I mean, obviously the Invasion, that was a massive flop. I mean, Goldberg's first WWE ring run was crap because of how they booked him and stuff like that. So yeah, I don't think it was destined to stick around for a long time. Probably might last a little bit longer, but probably not that much longer, to be honest. Then Stone Cold stuck around. Viewers you'd have liked to have seen him on Raw. Well, since we're on the show, I would say I really want to see. If you remember, Austin was starting a feud with Eddie Guerrero at the time, so I'd be really interested to see how that feud would have played out. They were supposed to have a match at that King of the Ring pay-per-view, so would have been interesting to see that carry over to King of the Ring, maybe into Vengeance. See if those matches of Austin, what they could have done for Eddie's career. I mean, I'm assuming Austin would have went over both matches. I just cannot see Austin putting Eddie Guerrero over at the time. That would have surprised the hell out of me if he did that. But then after that, I guess maybe Austin Jericho, I suppose. If we're going by the roster changes at the time and assume Austin stays on Raw, like, so the likes of Brock, Benoit, Eddie all go over to SmackDown like they did. Jericho and the likes come over to Raw, so Austin Jericho, I suppose. And maybe Austin Triple H. Maybe revisit that one, because why the hell not? There wasn't really that many fresh options for Austin on Raw at that time, to be honest with you. Especially as there was no point in turning him back heel, because obviously his original heel run wasn't very good. So there weren't many good heels on Raw at the time for Austin to face, so I guess finish the Guerrero feud out, maybe feud with Jericho, and maybe feud of Triple H to Unforgiven and No Mercy maybe, until Shawn Michaels came back. But yeah, then if there was one guy who felt deserved a better push than the one in the brand split, it would have been your opinion. Now go with RVD. I mean, I would say obviously you're thinking like, yeah, RVD did get pushed in the brand split. He was the Intercontinental Champion, and he sometimes got a sniff of the main event scene, but I feel like, other than Austin and Rock leaving in 2002, Rock getting more and more into Hollywood, Austin walking out and retiring, I feel like at that point RVD was probably the most over babyface in the company. I feel like he got shafted a little bit, right? I mean, for me, they should have really pushed him as one of Raw's top guys, like top 2 or 3 guys. I still to this day feel like he should have at least had one world title run in 2002. But yeah, I just feel like it wasted a big opportunity with Rob Van Dam in that era. Last question is one question from the Black Line. What do you think about Brock Lesnar's WWE title push? Thought the push itself was pretty much perfect, to be fair. I mean, this is how you book a young monster heel and book him right. So when Brock Lesnar came in from the main roster from OVW, he had it all physically. I mean, he was a huge guy, he had youth behind him, he had great strength, great speed, great technical wrestling ability. The one weakness he had though was not good on the mic. But so WWE took that one weakness, put in Paul Heyman as his agent, and turned that weakness into a positive, because Brock Lesnar didn't have mic skills. That was what Paul Heyman was for, and obviously that's followed him into his later career. I mean, that's kind of still how it goes. I mean, Brock Lesnar doesn't talk much, Paul Heyman does the talking, Brock Lesnar does the arse whipping. Works. Simple formula. And then obviously at the start of his run, he was beating guys, but not by pinfall or submission, but by stoppage. I thought this was a fucking brilliant move. I mean, first few matches he was just beat his opponent up so much that the referee had to stop the match. So a little thing like that made a big difference, made him look believable. Then obviously he goes into the King of the Ring, smashes through the King of the Ring, wins the King of the Ring, and then the build up a SummerSlam. Because I feel Brock had some advantages that I feel like young guys in WWE don't have now. I mean, some of the guys that they had around, they had the likes of Hogan, The Rock, The Undertaker. Guys like that they could go over and look good in. I feel like guys now don't really have that. So he went to, after the big one in SummerSlam, he smashed through Hulk Hogan on SmackDown. Hulk Hogan put Brock Lesnar over like a motherfucker. Made him look like a beast. There was none of this Brock Lesnar cowering away from Hogan or anything like that. Heyman wasn't interfering in his matches too much, helping them win. He was winning these matches on his own. He smashed Hulk Hogan. And obviously the big one, no 50-50 crap that we see now. I mean, we see it too much now. A guy will get built up, then he'll win a match, then he'll lose a match, then he'll win a match. And they often don't get much momentum, or they go through a bunch of guys and then John Cena fucking smashes through them, or nowadays Roman Reigns smashes through them. So Brock Lesnar was booked to his absolute strengths, his weaknesses were hidden. Then he went into SummerSlam, beat The Rock clean, so in a few weeks Brock Lesnar had smashed through Hogan, beaten The Rock clean, and this was after he won the title, but then Undertaker Hell in a Cell. So I feel like Brock's push it was booked to perfection, to be honest with you. It really was. And that's a wrap, guys. So another long ass video. I try not to go too long, but I have. So if you've been through here the entire video, I thank you for that, for going through all that. So yeah, I'm going to do more of these. I'm open to suggestions. I've set 1 year. I'm selfishly going to do 1992 just for me, because that's the year I started watching wrestling. So that one, I'm telling you now, what I'm going to do on my own. I don't really want to. I would prefer to stick from 1992 onwards because that's when I watched wrestling. But I'm open to doing years before that. But however, I'll make 1985 the cut-off. Just don't ask me anything daft like 1977 or something like that. I wasn't a wrestling fan there. Don't have great knowledge of that. I'd prefer to do to 1992 onwards. But like I say, I'm open to late 80s, very early 90s. So yeah. So thanks for the questions, guys. This video, not sure when this is going to come out because I've had to record this in 2 parts because it's been a really long video. So until next time, guys, peace.